Thank you for all for being patient. We are, I think, ready to go. Already? Okay. Are we going to chime in, someone?
We are not.
Okay, so fair enough. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, February 27th for Flossmoor School District 161, School Board of Education. Could we roll call Mrs. Brino?
Okay, Carol?
Here.
Ford? Here. Huckabee? Here. Paredes?
Here, the quorum is present. First on the agenda, we have audience comments. We have one person that I believe has signed up. Pastor Pitts.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
To the interim superintendent, Dr. Pop, to the board, to whom honors due. I've had spoken with Dr. Pop. I have had a tremendous challenge with the individual education plan at Serena Hills. I guess I'm always, being a senior pastor in this community, I'm always finding myself engaged in something that kind of hits me first personally, and then I get an opportunity to actually see how things are done. I'm very displeased, and I would like to see some resolve. By nature, I'm an activist almost, in that I get real feisty when I feel people are mistreated, and I feel like people are being mishandled. I pay taxes in this community. I've been met, even though I feel that the school is an excellent school, which is why I chose to educate even my older children in this school district. I feel like I've been met with nothing short of extreme arrogance and pride. I have a thread of emails from the school. I don't want to point fingers, but everyone knows that everything rises and falls on leadership. If there's a problem at my church, even if it's a mortgage-related issue, they're not going to call the church, they're going to call me. And so I would love if someone could please help me. I gained custody of my 8-year-old grandson that I love. And I've been met with some extreme opposition, along with all of the other transition that you have to face when you're trying to get us moving toward adoption. So when you say 5 minutes, in Bible college they taught us that you don't go past your time. So I promise you, I know how much time I have left. I've got 2.5 more minutes. I would really appreciate if someone could help me address the concerns. Dr. Pop and I have talked. I do not pay tax dollars for people to get arrogant and full of pride as it relates to children. I want my grandchild to be afforded the opportunity to have a successful, productive, meaningful education. So I would hope, and last but not least, and I hope this doesn't sound, threatening in any way. If there is no resolve, immediate resolve, then I'm going to be forced to kind of deal with this a different way. Legally, intelligently, picketing, bringing parishioners to this meeting to make sure. As a matter of fact, and I promise you, 30 seconds, I think there's some other things that I saw that needs to be looked at as it relates to how many African-American teachers are there at Serena Hills. So I see some things that now may cause me to really get involved. Thank you so kindly.
Can you just confirm, so you have spoken to both the superintendent as well as the building principal?
I have the superintendent. I would have to say, even though he's an intern, people don't know how much they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. He has met me with nothing short of a lot of compassion and understanding as it relates to this issue. On the other hand, the principal of Serena Hills, has met me with nothing but extreme pride and arrogance.
Can I ask a question? Is there any more specific that you could tell us? I mean, it's a lot of general, so I mean, is
You
it
know
related to?
I actually wanted to keep it general because I didn't want to come here and make it personal, because this isn't personal.
You know what,
So-
if I may, and I appreciate your comments,
Thank
and
you.
certainly, as a teacher, father, special ed teacher, you know, having been adopted, you know, having, you know, a lot of experience working with kids with special needs, I certainly, you know, appreciate your concern.
Thank
In general. you know.
Yeah, I just wanted to keep it general.
I appreciate that. And if, actually, my suggestion is, if you have something very specific that you would like us to address, just send us an email, and we'll address it as we get it.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Mrs. Huckabee? Is that all right with you? Only because,
I hear you, but what I'm saying is, I just specifically wanted to know, I didn't quite catch the first part of this in terms of what specifically was, I'm not talking about specifically about the child, he said something about the education, so that's what I'm trying to get clarity on.
okay. If you-
I'll just take another 60 seconds, I promise you, I'm not long-winded. One of the concerns that I have is that my grandson is here for the education to come home. I've been met with Principal D advising me as to what my legal rights are. I don't need legal advice. When I need legal advice, I contact an attorney, or I contact the appropriate powers to be. I don't need the school delving into the legalities of my rearing my grandson. I need for my grandson to come here for the education.
Okay, thank you very much, and we will address your email once we get it, and you can take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any other audience comments, so at this time, unless there are some. So at this time, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Bob?
Thank you very much, and thanks for being here, everyone. I went ahead and did some visuals tonight, because usually I sit here and I talk through, and it's not memorialized, except in the notes, but so I put together a couple slides to guide this. Lots of great things going on in the district, and I'll start with, Kathy's going to be forwarding here for me, just a nice email from one of our staff members. We hosted the Illinois Music Educator Association workshop on education through music on Saturday. And as you can see, the workshop's about using movement, music, play to develop social skills and language. And people were raving about the excellent workshop, including one of your own board members. And Kathy, if you could skip on over to the next one. I know it's hard to see, but that on the left side, second down, there you go, you're pointing right to him. It's kind of obvious that.
Tall Volker.
So Steve got to attend the workshop, and I'll hand off to you for a second, if you don't mind just sharing
No,
with
not
us
at all.
what you learned there.
You know what, and I think this is really indicative of all the really great things that are happening in our district, in the PDs and, you know, in our building, I was, you know, honored to have been asked by teachers, oh, you know, is this something you might be interested in? And so I went last Saturday morning, and at first we were all around in a circle, and, you know, my first reaction was, okay, this is, more interpersonal than I imagined, as, you know, we went around and shook hands and we sang songs. But by the end, we were, dancing, we were involving movement, and these great interpersonal strategies that I see certainly in the younger kids and pre-K, all the way through middle school and into high school as well. And so I immediately tried to think of a way that I could use some of the things I was learning for teaching financial literacy vocabulary to freshmen at Bloom on today. And, so I'm still working on that. But it really was a fantastic experience, and it was a great group, and it really utilizes, I think, an under-accessed strategy to connect to kids, which is music. And music winds up being the thing that kids most readily identify with, and it is the thing that they most easily respond to. And, I can't say enough good things about it, so I will, cut myself off to say that it was just really spectacular. And I hope that the district continues with this in particular, but also with, this level of innovative approach to education. It really was great.
And right before we started, I said, hey, Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot, so you did really well for this.
Thank you.
Right on. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy, if you could. So 20 years ago, the NEA started Read Across America, and March 2nd is the NEA's Read Across America Day. We're getting ready to celebrate Read Across America Week, and we know we've got a lot of great things going on in schools, whether it's one book, one school, or I think I saw somebody saying one school, one book. We have reading nights with parents coming up. We've got lots of activities going on in the building about that. I bring that one up because I want to share this next slide with you that it's really important. And if hopefully we got some viewers of this video at home, some parents especially, we have a group of community members who put this together a little while back, and we've been sharing it out. I know our principals are sharing it out with their families. I wanted to bring it up today. So as we talk about things like Read Across America, and we talk about things like Play 60, the Get Physically Fit. But this concept of the 20 Minutes Matter is about parents interacting with their kids, guardians interacting with their kids, 20 minutes a day on something more academic, like reading a book, like solving a math problem, like having their child explain something that they're doing in school. It's not good enough for us to ask, how was your day? Because the answer typically is fine. And then, what did you learn? And then the answer comes back, nothing. We have to learn strategies at home to ask our children to explain something. Ask our children to share something that they've read. Sit down and read it with them. And so I wanted to get our plug-in for our 20 Minutes Matter for parents to say, okay, we got this big push out there for kids to play. We need a push out there for us to learn together. And even if, when my parents didn't know the math that I was trying to do at home, they made sure that I was doing the math, and that they made sure my work was done. And so that 20 minutes a day does matter. Thanks, Kathy, if you could switch us on over. Great event that Annabelle told me about here a little while ago. We had about 50 students and parents participate in the Homewood Science Center Girls STEAM Ahead event. That was on Saturday at the Idlewild Country Club. Students from Parker and area schools engaged in conversations with women in STEAM careers. The event also featured keynote address from Robin Kelly. So it was great that we had that participation there. Our next one, I wanted to throw a shout out to a whole bunch of folks at Parker Junior High who are working on making the schedule there more accessible to every child. And I know I've got a whole bunch of little writing on these next two slides, but we started off with taking a look at the schedule, taking a look at what the schedule needed to be, and spend the day talking about how do we create a schedule that really focuses on meeting the needs of every child so that they can be ready for high school and ultimately to be college and career ready. How to create a schedule that follows our board policy of what our course requirements are for junior high students. How do we provide adequate time for breakfast and lunch, because we will have breakfast there next year. Adequate time to implement interventions with Fidelity, and that one's bolded up there because that's been a big topic here from 9 o'clock meeting that I had with the principal and assistant principal on December 5th, my first day. They brought this one up, that the schedule doesn't allow for that to happen. Other topics that we looked at said we need to be able to do these things. Offer our encore courses, but we need to even offer an elective class. Get teachers some collaborative plan time and be contractually compliant with the planning time that we create. That whatever schedule we create, we have to fit into the space that we have. So we have to figure out how to utilize our space even better than we are now. Adequate number of sections to accommodate growth. And so what that means is when we're going into scheduling, no matter what we land on, that we have to recognize we have a number of students who will come into the building late summer and into the school year, make sure we can accommodate their educational needs appropriately. The team talked a lot about the need to focus on social emotional learning. They talked about meeting the needs of all students, including those with special needs, and then later on, making sure that we are meeting all the legal requirements for our ELLs. So and the list went on. The list is actually a little longer than this. Here are our requirements. Now let's try to create a schedule that meets those requirements. The team did a great job. We identified some roadblocks. We're now working on overcoming those roadblocks before ultimately we bring the schedule back to the board to share with you, here's the work and here's what we're thinking. That schedule may have some staffing implications, and that's why I wanted to preview that with you tonight, just that for a future conversation, we may be looking at treating the budget a little bit differently based on what we see as a better way to meet the educational needs of all our students. What I appreciated about this team is that they looked at anything from students who needed to catch up, so who needed interventions there, all the way through the opportunity for acceleration, both in-house and, of course, going over to high school. So they looked at the range of learners in that dialogue. Thanks, Kathy. Two quick staff recognitions. You heard about Andrea Beatty last time we were here, and just to give you an update, so she is a Golden Apple finalist, one of 34 from the Chicagoland area. There's a recognition event on Saturday that where she'll be honored, but we have a site visit this Friday, and that site visit is part of the vetting to see if ultimately she will be the Golden Apple winner. So we'll let you know as we know more. The second staff recognition here, one of our case managers, Angel, presented a session at the Illinois Association for Education and Rehabilitation of the Blind and Visually Impaired Conference on February 16th and 17th. I always appreciate when our staff get out there and are asked to present because it's just a nice reminder of the high quality people that we have in district and that other people want to learn from us. And I think we can continue to do things in-house to share those pieces of excellence that we know. So it's nice to have another staff member recognized by having her be asked to speak there. This was huge news, and we didn't get enough play on this, and we'll get this up on the website. Our 8th grade boys, and we will be inviting them here along with their 7th grade counterparts, they finished second in state. And so they've got this great big trophy that I got to take. We will invite them out, and we will invite the 7th graders who, I want to say, came in 8th place in the state. So not too shabby. They did extremely well. And so there's a long list of accomplishments by that boys team. I won't read them all right now. We'll make sure we read them when they're here and we can honor them appropriately. My last point here is we're going to try something a little different with our virtual backpack. So in talking to a number of parents about virtual backpack, about things like e-chalk, they talk about sometimes in the process of trying to get to all these places where we deposit information, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. So right now in our virtual backpack, you have to go to the backpack typically. But we're going to look at a system where we push the backpack out to people. So I sent a message out via our Skyward email system. Kathy was able to push that out last week for us. And what I'm thinking we're going to do is a somewhat regular but not too often message so that people just don't hit delete right away, indicating here's something going on. Like Annabelle and I talked about when we're ready to roll out to parents, here's what's going on with the math curriculum. That will have a blurb about our math curriculum so they know what's coming, and then we'll indicate, by the way, here's what's in the district's virtual backpack, and here's what's in the individual school's virtual backpack. People can then click on it or hit delete as they see fit. So bringing the backpack directly to parents instead of having parents have to go and seek the thing out. We're collecting some baseline data right now as far as where we have been, and we'll then compare it to where we go as far as how many people actually click into it by pushing out that regular message. And I thank Kathy for her help with that and in advance for her help on helping craft those regular messages that we put out there. I want to thank the board for your service to our community and especially to the students that we serve. Thank you.
What's the timing on partial school work day?
I think, do we have a date on inviting? On
If you plan on thinking,
on the schedule?
on the schedule, I'm sorry, yeah.
You know what, we need to, Dr. Person had a meeting with her team, and we need to follow up and see where they are with working out some of those roadblocks, and then we'll come back at you. I'm hoping sooner than later, because as I told the team, if we do have to post more positions with it, if we're saying we want to expand staff based on the program, we want to get out as early as possible so that we can attract the best candidates. So I'm looking to do it sooner than later.
Fantastic. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the presentations, discussion on facility bids and recommendations, part of our strategic plan for finance goal 2. Dr. Pop.
I'm going to hand off to Fran right away, and she's got
I'm
to...
going to hand off to Matt.
All right, that's pretty good. We're going to just keep doing that throughout the night on all these topics.
We did get bids back, so I'm going to let Matt and Scott kind of walk through those, and we have George, we're not going to forget about him, he's sitting over there, but to kind of walk through what we have, and then I'll jump in on a little bit of financing talk and so on, but there's,
And this goes back to the November presentation.
November presentation.
So this is taking the next step on that conversation.
Thank you, board members, Dr. Pop. I'm Matt Tepper from Green Associates, the architect of record, assisting you along with the life safety improvements and all sorts of things that have been going on in the district lately. And so, yes, this is a backpack of the November committee of the whole meeting, as well as the board meeting in December that approved and moving forward to procure pricing for a handful of life safety items and other improvements around the district that will be taking place hopefully this summertime. So the first one that kind of came in that was identified on the previous meeting was about half of the roof areas at Parker Junior High School. These are the areas that are considered kind of the most, the oldest roof conditions that are out there, and some of them are having some active issues that are currently being dealt with. So this would kind of attempt to alleviate those kind of first wing of things, as well as some of the active issues that are going on. Back in that original meeting, around the statement of probable construction costs was a little bit over $1 million, including contingencies and other things that kind of, I believe what was presented was about 1.3 for a total project cost for the whole thing. The bids came in, the apparent low bid was about 1.1 million. And most of them were in the field of around that range between 1.1 and 1.4. So I mean, it was, we were pleased with the amount of bidders that came out, and in the kind of collection and proximity of each other to themselves. So it kind of made that the scope was well understood and able to be managed.
How many bids did you receive?
We did receive 7. And so it was a good collection of a lot of qualified bidders. We did get the lowest from Brother Roofing, which we talked to them, and they're qualified, capable, have been in business dealing with roofs and school buildings for many years. So they are very well considered competent and qualified to do the project of this schedule. The one thing in here was there was an alternate that we usually take for liquidated damages. It's a clause that if they feel they're going to go over, if there's some monies that could come back to the district, they did supply on the low bid a dollar value back if the liquidated damages clause would be omitted, which means if they go over time, they wouldn't be penalized. But the value that the return on that is not necessarily the value of being able to kind of keep the schedule current, especially with Parker and any district facility of being up and running well prior to school starting. So the scope of this project would start in June and end in the beginning of August, and there is kind of a few weeks of middle ground time before school and teachers will return, and this would be scheduled to be completed. Moving on some of the other parks around as a separate package, the Parker Junior High roof project was its own package, its own bid element. This one was bid as other elements and district-wide improvements, mainly handling kind of remaining the priority items based on the life safety report that has been being worked on for the last few years. This is kind of just a rehash of some of the same areas. Door systems, specifically here at Parker, some fire separation issues, some exterior masonry work that needs to kind of button up the exterior envelope a little bit more. These are shown at Flossmoor, some at Western Avenue, and Parker is showing some signs of deterioration over time. So the probable construction cost of just kind of those B items was around $200,000. We kind of came in with a range of base bid of $400,000 to $600,000. Some of those, based on our interviews with the bidders, kind of included some of the alternate items, labor, and so there was kind of a back and forth, but it was fairly well confirmed that all the responsive low bidders for this base bid work, which were 6 contractors bid for this one. We did talk to the floor low, just because of the other scenarios that are kind of going to be presented shortly thereafter. But again, the range and the amount of bidders was, the range was tight and the amount of bidders was fairly large. So it gave us kind of a good idea and feel that they understood the scope and were able to kind of make it through to completion. Quickly, I'll go through the alternates that were listed. I know at the last committee of the whole meeting, the board meeting, was kind of an idea to kind of go kind of an a la carte style of here's the base bid for life safety that would require to happen. And then the alternates kind of got into other items where had been identified by the administration or by the district that could use improvement or need some special attention throughout the last period of time. First one that was identified was adjusting existing classroom security hardware from what it is currently to more of a classroom security specific function. This would allow teachers with any key in the district, backpacked with the next alternate, but with their key in their hand, be able to lock the outside lever of the door without having to open the door or anything else. They could stay inside the room, lock the outside lever, and then they would be in their secure room with no other action required. Probable construction costs for all of these specific for classroom and student occupied spaces around $230,000. The range came in between $100,000 and $200,000. So again, our budget estimate was in line with what the scope of work. Is there a question?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what is the, and I'm all for safety, and I'm all for these locks that we did. Psychologically, it gives people a sense of, okay, lock the door, it's nice. And I know we discussed this, I want to say, 2 years ago, as a, considerations of safety issues. Can you tell me just the cost difference between that door handle and a door handle that was matched to what we, basically just like a hardware replacement for what we have now?
Just in kind with what you would have without adding in the classroom security function into it. A number, it would be difficult to kind of put something to me specifically, but I would say they're a normal hardware, because you're dealing with only one cylinder on the outside and 2 keyed cylinders, as opposed to the security hardware, is really just the cost of that extra cylinder, because the housing and everything relatively remains close to the same. It's just kind of having that extra locking function on the interior. So I would say a replacement hardware piece would be 70–80% of what the cost of a classroom security hardware piece would be.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we kind of were deciding or thinking that this was going to be an option at this point in time, because some of the B priority items and some of the other things that we're doing throughout some of the facilities are going to be addressing doors currently. So if we're going to be touching a door or replacing a door, now would be the best opportunity time to bring it up to what is kind of current trends in classroom security.
Absolutely.
The next alternate was still dealing with door hardware, and this one was kind of a bigger chunk of at least the statement of probable costs of around $437,000. Our ranges came in around 125 to 446. In some of the interviews, we can kind of explain where that kind of low range came in, mainly because they kind of put it in their base bid labor and they didn't put it in the actual hardware piece. But the ranges were still, and the scope of work was still in line with what was understood and expected throughout this process. What this alternate does is kind of handle the remaining doors and hardware that haven't been touched. And it's mainly in an attempt to consolidate and streamline what the district's key condition is right now. Right now, there's multiple facilities with different keys or different manufacturers from building to building, and thus it kind of creates a difficult master key system to try to manage. And so this is an attempt to kind of holistically look at the district while we're kind of dealing with these door hardware types issues and be able to, streamline security and health safety and just kind of maintenance of all the door hardware systems as they relate to the buildings. Moving on alternates 2.1 and 3.1 are dealing with current IT spaces that are becoming overheated. So this kind of involves just kind of bringing in some natural ventilation, but air conditioning ventilation into these spaces. Original probable cost was around $36,000, $37,000. The ranges came in between $48,000 and $50,000, which this includes, all the equipment, the labor, the hardware to be able to kind of install these places in some kind of tightly confined places, which kind of poses some interesting challenges in some areas, but should be able to accommodate and alleviate these overheating scenarios. Alternate A 4.1 is dealing here at Normandy Villa with kind of an old and used up water main. We had a break, not within this last year. So this is mainly just to kind of make sure that the facility doesn't have to sustain an outage again, just for having, I believe they're around 50 to 60 years old. The pipes are original to the buildings that are heading out to the street. Probable cost was around $57,500. Prices came in between $56,000 and $62,000. So we're kind of right in line with our budget estimates of what would take place. And this would also include replacing a backflow preventer that's inside the building. As the last inspection that went through, it passed, but it was hard to maneuver, hard to manage by the inspector. So he was saying it was about on its last element to even kind of function in the testable fashion. One of the last alternates is 5.01. It's again here at Normandy Villa. Over this last summer, the north side, we did some abatement activities of getting rid of asbestos tile and replacing some floor finishes in the north portions, in the north offices. It was a possibility to add in, at this point in time, kind of the east offices core, just to kind of take bit by bit as we kind of go around the facility. So this would be, abatement happening in this area with new floor finishes, and then removing some, old abandoned pipe that's up there from the previous project that was left up there, purposely left up there. So our probable cost was around $32,000. Our estimates came in between 18 and 20. These estimates don't take into account the actual abatement. Our initial probable construction cost did kind of include that number in there as a possibility. Usually abatement is handled independently by the district as a separate contract, and I believe that is being out for pricing right now.
Correct, we're hoping to see numbers about 45,000 just for the data.
So we're talking about 77,000?
Total, correct.
Yeah, including in, that would add to the 18 to 20, so it would probably be in the 58 to 60,000 range for that full package scope of work. So this is just kind of a brief overview of what those, pretty much just in kind of a one synopsis sheet of where everything was at, where the actual bid ranges came in compared to the alternates, where we were at with our subtotal and probable construction costs, and kind of where the ranges fall. So we were, kind of within expectations. The thing with going through these real quick of scenario options is, depends on how, what alternates get selected. Mainly the alternates dealing with the door hardware with the biggest swings. The alternate 2, 3, 4, and 5 all were kind of within each other in pricing. So it didn't necessarily change the player based on if those alternates get chosen or not. It was really those kind of hardware elements that kind of really kind of changed the scenario up. So what we kind of looked at as 3 potential scenarios were, scenario 1 is everything gets selected as is. All the alternates get accepted. And then that would provide a contract price of $960,000, and that would be by Key Construction based on our review of the system. And Key Construction was the one that offered kind of the biggest value for this hardware component. During our interview process with them and the others, they had kind of, for lack of a better term, front-loaded their base bid based on the labor that would take to do kind of these things. And these are more just numbers that are relating to the hardware and minor installs, and they kind of put a lot into their base bid amount. And that was kind of a gamble that they just decided to take on their own.
Sorry, but we keep construction. I just wanted to be, well, no, it's a part of that. Let me ask the local vision answer that. Were there multiple, like the Key, they bid on all of them, were there more companies that put in bids for separate projects, or they all did all systems? So it wasn't really one that did like this one and this one? Okay. And was that a requirement for us to, that we bid on all?
Well, usually that's how it's just kind of laid out. It is, you have a base bid scope of work, and then you have alternates, and then they attach those dollar amounts to those alternates. So how the combination of things play out is really just in the nature of selecting what you guys want to have to move forward with, and they just supply their numbers based on their understanding.
Are they local, where are they local?
Key Construction is, I think their home base is in Chicago.
Do we have any local bidders?
Yes.
Do they come in as one of the low bids, or no?
There were 2 that I believe are out. One was Chicago Heights Construction, and then
because we've had this conversation, every time we make sure that we're looking at local companies and everything. Okay, thank you.
Scenario 2 is the only thing that's grayed out is this alternate 1.02, which is kind of the Keene consolidation scope alternate. If that kind of gets taken out of the mix, the total kind of drops down to $772,000 in complete construction resources, then becomes the apparent low based on that scenario. And then in the last scenario that is just kind of was presented at this is taking out the class of security function, leaving still the priority B base bid scope of work, the things that need to happen. That brings the total to $565,000 and puts Metropolitan Corporation in the low position just based on how that gets played out. But through our interviews that we had, they were very, very helpful, very beneficial. All of them during that interview process handled them well professionally, and can be identified as being qualified bidders for any of the scopes of work that are selected for this.
Are the scenarios based on the prioritization of the alternates?
I guess the reason that I looked at it in some different scenario fashion was the other alternates The dollar amounts didn't affect the players as much, so these were the ones that kind of really affected who would be the selected bidder. But
Yeah, additionally, especially alternates 2, 3, and 4 are real problems for us right now. And for the dollar amount that you're looking at, the IT rooms, we're burning up servers. So if we don't air condition it, we're just gonna keep having to replace equipment that's in there because they're just running too hot and we're blowing up equipment, basically. And here, that main broke twice when we were fixing it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we know it's ripe to continue to break, and so it's just gonna cost you more money if we hold tight. So those 2 items especially, we just really feel strongly that they just need to get taken care of, or in the long run, it's gonna cost you more money than it's worth.
So if needed, you could actually prioritize the alternates. It sounds like there are
Yeah.
some that are more urgent than others.
Absolutely. The problem comes with the doors. That again, you're gonna spend more money in the long run if you say, well, just put the handles on, but don't do the key. Then you're gonna have to go back and pay for labor again to go and touch every single one of them again. So that's really where the decision comes. Do we just want to take care of the doors that are a problem with life safety? And that brings you to this one here. So it doesn't address the security issue, so teachers will still have to go outside of the classroom in order to lock the door. So that doesn't get taken care of. And then the second thing was you wouldn't have that master key structure that you would put in place. If you didn't want to do either one, that to me makes more sense than if you say, let's do alt 101, but not do 102. Because 102, eventually you're going to want to get that master key schedule in place so that we have keys that we can hand out just for specific places. And it's going to cost you so much more to do that after the fact because you're going to have to pay the labor all over again. So you have to pay that labor twice as opposed to just once. So I guess when I'm looking at it from the scenarios that I played in my head, it's either all or getting rid of both A101 and A102.
And even though the numbers kind of were reverse of what you thought, so by them front-loading the labor, it looked like we were way off there, but then the other costs below in the alternates were a lot lower
Yes.
because the labor was moved. And this looks like one of the scenarios where if you spend the money, if you do all the projects right now, you will save money in both the short and the long run. It looks like your bid, by accepting the bid, the first way you presented it, you'll come in under your estimate or very, very close to your estimate. If you do it in pieces, you'll go beyond your estimate.
potentially, yes, especially if you span it over multiple years, instead of inflation kicks in and kind of down the road, it gets more expensive for the same parts of work.
So far as funding of it is concerned, we are coming to the end of the dollars in capital projects funding, what we did funding. And life safety, we have about $600,000 at the end of this year in the life safety fund, which clearly wouldn't cover the entire amount. The thought right now would be to use some cash to the tune of about $100,000 for the non-life safety items. Use the balance of some capital projects and about $100,000 of your cash balances to do the non-life safety items. For the life safety items, we would use the balance that's currently in the life safety fund. And then what we would do is loan about $900,000 from the ed fund into the life safety fund. And then for the next 3 years, as we levy in life safety, that money would repay the ed fund over 3 years, and that's what we're allowed to do essentially. So that would be how we fund this year's. Then what we want to do in the summer of 2018 will be up for discussion as to, there are some things that are still like safety priority B that we're going to have to take care of at other early as July or August, and then start talking to EMAs, our financial analysts, again, to give us some ideas of what our best bets are for funding that kind of work, and then to what extent we're going to do work at that park. Because you are still looking at somewhere between $2 and $3 million worth of work in order to finish off this 10-year legislature.
With the priority A, right?
Priority A's are done.
So priority B.
We're on priority B's.
Okay, moving still.
Yes, so the last year priority B's would be the 2018 summer.
And so this proposal gets you about half the roof at Parker.
Correct.
You'd be looking at the next
We'd be looking
half.
at the next half and then what that really entails, because then we have to start getting into conversations about mechanics. And what the board wants to
And
do.
again, we're not going to let us fund for future, is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, you would, for the next 3 years, which is what you're about to do, the statute, you would be able to pay for essentially this summer's work. So you would loan the money from the ed fund to the life safety fund, and then it would be repaid by the levy for the next 3 years. But then summer 2018, we're going to have a whole different conversation.
And how does the roof work impact summer school at Parker?
Summer school needs to repeat.
Any questions or comments?
The air conditioning is, when you say mechanicals at Parker,
Well, let's start with this summer, besides beside the roof at Parker, you're also replacing the 2 air handlers at Parker. For the north gym, which is essentially the gym that would air condition the north gym. So that's this summer, that's included in what we just presented to you right now.
but we know, and you alluded to it, that
However,
when we get to the other side of the
when you get to
building.
the other side of Parker, that roof there also has all kinds of mechanicals up there, and it has smaller air conditioning units and other work that we're gonna have to address as to how we replace. Do we replace with what we have, do we replace with something different, and if so, what does that look like, what's the dollar figure to it? And that would be addressed with air conditioning again, with that part of the building.
So, I just rethought my question that I just asked you about the roof work in summer school. So technically, the work that's being done on the roof actually should not have any impact on what's happening up under in the classroom. So
But it is a 6th grade wing. So
It's
this
the
summer
sixth
is
grade
a
wing,
6th grade wing and north gym.
So is the 6th grade wings,
So, hang on, we'll get to the state, right there, I believe, right there. All those areas in red is this summer. It's the area to the south, the west. That would be the colleges.
so there's capacity to have, I don't know how many kids typically register for summer school, and whether kids even, do families even know that summer school's not going to be at Parker. I mean, that's another discussion, I guess.
summer school's on the agenda for our next board meeting.
And it wouldn't be the first time, when we were doing the new addition, we didn't have it there, we had it at Serena as well.
So Serena has capacity, I guess.
Yeah, so they have air conditioning.
House
Yeah,
junior high school
that's
kids.
Serena's air conditioning.
And that's why we're going to.
Even with, if you're asking about still having summer school at Parker while this is happening.
Yes.
I don't feel comfortable having all that equipment, which is going to be in the immediate area. I'm talking about there, that's a big piece of equipment off. And having summer school is a part of the hospital.
If you say you don't feel comfortable just having all that equipment, then I understand.
It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to figure out, I mean, because, I mean, when I had work done on my roof at home, because I live in the house, so I was just trying to get a sense of the true extent of the work that needs to be done, and does it truly impact what's happening below, and does that mean we really need to shift summer school
I would
because of
have,
the construction from one building to the next. You're saying that you don't feel comfortable having that type of work done with the kids still in-house.
Building large screen room, bathrooms and so on.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion or comments or questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a briefing on Mandarin option at Parker Junior High School, part of our strategic plan curriculum and assessment goal 2. Dr. Coffey.
I'm going to ask Ms. Crawford to wherever you'd like. Giving everybody options today, where they want to present from.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to share with you some ideas around an exciting opportunity for our students to participate in learning the Mandarin language. I've been
You're good.
Sound okay?
Yep.
I can turn my teacher voice on.
No, you're perfect 30.
But I've been working with the HF curriculum directors as well as the Homewood curriculum directors and IGP moving monthly. And one of the things that we've been discussing is ways that we can support our students when they get into high school and sort of work backwards to not only grow their programs, but build in opportunities for our students to be better prepared for programming when they get to high school. Right now, HF has two Mandarin 1 sections and 2 Mandarin 2 sections. So they've been growing this program over the years. They have about 40 kids in each section. Obviously, a large percentage of those students are former Parker students. And I received lots of requests and interest from parents to offer this opportunity at the junior high level. And then, I think also there's an opportunity if we get the position to offer this opportunity in some capacity to our elementary students. Students definitely pick up languages better at a younger age than as they get older. It's harder to grasp the language. But there's a lot of different options. HF has given great guidance on how we can develop our programming to be more in line with what they're doing. Some ideas was that we would sort of do an exploration course to prepare them for the opportunity in high school. It is a challenging language to learn, but if we were sort of the building blocks for them being prepared for high school, we could give them some of the cultural enrichment, learning some characters, learning some general practices, as well as learning parts of the language. It's also a difficult position to fill, so that's why I wanted us to be in front of this and have an opportunity to get a position soon and get a position early, because it may take a while. HF has a teacher who is connected to the Midwest Chinese Teachers Association, who would be willing to help us in finding a teacher as well through that partnership. And today we did share a survey with all parents that went out through Skyward just to get data on the level of interest. This will help us with the planning. So very simple, just asking families to identify whether or not they would be interested in their child taking a course like this, whether they have prior experience, and what grade level they're in. So once we have this data, it can help us plan better. We also were able to build this into the conversation around the Parker schedule, so that regardless of the schedule that we go with or the options that we go with for that, it is on the table to be able to build in as part of the schedule for next year at Parker. Again, depending on what level of interest we have in the district.
So what happens if there is a lot of interest? Well, one, what signifies a lot of interest? Two, if there is a lot of interest, let's say for, for parents who say yes and they currently have a 5th grader, right? So they're thinking about 6th grade. Then what does that mean for the other languages that we offer?
Yep, that's a great question. So as soon as you're offering putting another offering on the table,
Right.
you are taking away from
Can't offer
somewhere else.
Mandarin at
Right.
6 if you're not offering Spanish and French at 6,
Right.
right?
Right. And if, let's say it's at a grade level now where students have the option of taking French or Spanish, you throw in Mandarin in the mix, it will pull from one of the others, is what we believe.
Yeah.
There's no other choice that they can get rid of to say that they want to do two. So we do know that it could impact numbers in French or Spanish.
Although, I want to get back to
Yes.
that question,
Yeah.
but the second question or third is, do all 8th grade students now have the option of taking a language or not? I'm trying to figure out how much would it realistically pull from the other languages if the opportunity to take a language increases, the pool increases in terms of the
Right.
number of kids who actually have the opportunity to take a class.
And since I can't answer the all question, I'm going to defer if Annabelle or Dr. Person or Shanika, does every child have the opportunity to take a language right now?
No. 8th grade, they do take Spanish and French is offered. But as far as 6th and 7th grade is concerned, they do not have a language today.
Right, but do all 8th graders
All
take a
8th graders
language?
take
Okay, so that was my question, so yes,
So that's where the pool
potentially
would be.
pull from, so, but since all 8th graders are taking a language, are all the classes at capacity? I mean, is there a fear that there is not enough room to add in one more language? I mean, if all 8th grade is taking a language.
Right. What'll happen is FTE could shift. So,
Well, that's-
because these, the staff we have, none of them can do Mandarin right now. So now you're adding that FTE into the mix, that full-time equivalent, whether it's a .2 or a .4, there will be a minus .2 or .4 somewhere else. If it's focused solely on 8th grade. Now, one of the things going back to that Parker schedule that we said, we wanted to have that the schedule would allow us ultimately to have options with language. And we've been just kicking around. What do you go back to the old model of, we'll give a taste of a few different languages to students at one grade level before they commit to a language at another grade level. And so as we looked at developing a schedule, we wanted to make sure that we had that flexibility. We're not landing that plane at the moment saying this is what it's going to be. First, we needed to know, do we have enough families that are interested in this language to take this conversation a step further?
Okay, so that goes back to my original question,
Yes.
which is, how much is enough? How many families constitutes as enough? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I think a reasonable gauge for that is to look at the numbers of students that are in the courses at HF. Right now, they have 20 students in each section, and they have 4 sections. They're obviously a much larger operation than we are, but I think that's a good gauge. If we get 20 students, that's a class that we could manage. If we get 60 students, we're not going to be able to manage that with one course or one section. So I think that's sort of the barometer that we could look at. And to go back to your question earlier, the data from HF in terms of what language for them, the entrance of Mandarin took away from their French numbers. But as they got more students, it sort of evened out, but that was the language that it took from.
So it didn't really impact the Spanish as much. It's more of the French.
It did, but they obviously still have a French program as well. It didn't sort of cannibalize the French program as well, but that was the language that it impacted numbers-wise.
This was just something that was nice, I didn't find the way, just reading the article. It was, I don't think it was the IASP agency, but it was talking about these 2 feeder schools for a local high school, and how they share the language, and actually utilize it. So it's like, well, I've lost my own thinking Mandarin over there, if that's even a possibility, or something we've ever thought about, doing anything about it. It may be totally weird.
With Homewood Elementary District 153 or?
Yeah, what would you do? I read something like, when I said last year, it was talking about 2 smaller feeder schools that were feeding into high school, how they collaborated on smaller enrollment type classes to give a different experience. So,
Yeah, in both districts, we are exploring this option as well as Homewood, so depending on the interest that we get, we're willing to share. Absolutely, it would help with financially or depending on what type of position we're able to get.
To your point of what you said, earlier exposure, kids having earlier exposure, able to adapt. And I don't even know that we had this conversation, but why are we waiting to 8th grade to get to a foreign language?
Yeah, I think we have opportunities to do both. Absolutely. I mean, we definitely, it's twofold. We want our students to be prepared right now that are going into high school and to be ready to have the experiences that are ready for them. But absolutely, I think there's opportunity to address it at the primary end as well, and the kids can grasp it just as easily, if not better. So I think depending on the interest, I think the numbers will tell us what we should do, and I think we can do both.
Just to go back to the conversations from last year, there was an opportunity that we had to learn about English, some very basic skills that we needed, so there was more rigor instead of the, so we pushed the language to 8th grade and made it, instead of 2 years, maybe 1. And I just remember that was just because there was some stuff. I can't remember the full conversation at this moment, but it was preparing our students to be successful in high school and some of the most rudimentary things. So it was like, yep, you can get Spanish, but if you don't have the reading right there. And it has some pieces to it. You know,
Yeah. And you know, that is a different conversation, but I will say the short answer is that is proving to be a challenge for our students when they get to high school, because the foreign language exposure, Homewood had 2 years, our students will have had 1. So comparing that data would be really important. The feedback that I've gotten is that our students struggle in seeing that some of the material in the foreign language classes for the first time. So it's always a give and take. We wanted the hours with ELA, but the students are also being held accountable for their foreign language courses as well.
And I think you're right from what I have heard, and somebody in the audience can correct me if I'm wrong, that it did go from the 2 years to the 1 to accommodate the double block of English. Fran is saying yes, and so that, yeah, that is why that happened. I think that doesn't preclude us, though, to continue to try to figure out, even if it's even if it's part of the encore sequence of how to do exposure, at least at an earlier grade level.
So how long now, Fran, I guess you're probably the best person to ask this question to. How long have we been doing the double block?
Second year, I believe.
2 or 3 years.
3 years.
2 or 3
So do we, and I'm not expecting to be able to answer this question tonight, and the look on your face, I know
Yep.
you know where I'm going with the
Yep,
question,
I
which
do.
is, do we know the impact of having a double block has had on ELA for our students? Yes, do we know whether or not it's been worth to do the double block, or?
I would assume
So
that.
I know you
should
don't know
get
the answer to that,
yeah.
but I can imagine in your conversations about the structure of your Parker Day, that could come up.
Are we seeing it in our scores? Where's the progress? Where are we measuring this?
I can tell you there was great advocacy at the table that double block extend to the vast majority of students at 8th grade also. So, but I don't have the data points to share at this point. But there was great advocacy for that at the table, and it wasn't in all. It sounded like the majority to me that they would like that double block for the majority of students.
Well, I mean, I think, so you've got a couple years worth of data to look at.
Yes.
You've got some students that you can look at during their tenure at Parker, but I think how the class of 2020 that's at HF right now will also, because they experience the double block as well. And so the goal, I'm assuming, is to strengthen ELA not only during their time at Parker, but also to better prepare them for 2023. So,
Yes.
so it would be interesting to see how those kids, because I guess they would be your first, would that be the first cohort of kids that went through the double block? Yeah, I mean, so that would be a good, that is our children, yes. But we have a class of 20 kids, but so that would be a good class to look at in terms of how, success rates, however it is that we're defining success with the double lock.
So we will be collecting this data, these numbers over the next week, and be prepared to share next steps on it. And I'll stay here because I think I'm up for.
Yes, you are.
Thanks.
Frank's going to join you.
Next up, we have Title I update.
Okay, we thought we would give you kind of an update on the Title I and Title II grants, mostly concentrating on Title I, but we were we decided to kind of tag team this one just because that's how Title I is done, is kind of in tandem. And how we've broken this up really is kind of process versus program. Because I'm more the process person, I'm the facts and the figures and the static information, and Annabelle obviously is the curriculum, she's the program, she's what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. So we're just gonna kind of walk you through. There's a lot of joint responsibilities between both curriculum and the building principals as well as the business department. We jointly write the grant, and when I mean jointly write the grant, she's writing the meat of it, the goals, what the program is, so on. My office assists with taking the numbers down and helping figuring out what the allocations are, and then working to make sure that we've got the money going into the right pots, and putting it into the accounting structure that's required by the state. We have compliance reporting, both of us. There's programmatic reporting, but there's also just the reporting of the expenditures, the expenditure reports that we do on a quarterly basis. So obviously my office takes care of the dollar figures, and Annabelle takes care of the program. Again, my office will take care of the payment of the expenditures and the reporting of the expenditures, but Annabelle will take care of the implementing of those and just giving us the bills when they're ready to be paid for what it is that you're actually doing curricular-wise. There's also audits on both of our ends, and some of them are joint, but a lot of them are separate. They'll have programmatic audits and they'll do the financial audits as well. So how this kind of begins is ISB really determines the allocations to the school districts by using the small area income and poverty estimates that are provided by the U.S. Department of Education. The data does lag. So right now, we're waiting on the 17-18 allocations, and they're going to be coming to the 2015 data. So there is quite a bit of lag time there. Once the state board comes up with allocations, they input them up into Iowa's system, which is where most of the reporting to the state is right now, and then we kind of go in and start doing our work. We pull up our report, and we put in the April free and reduced lunch figures. And that is where we actually determine what our low-income counts are. They come from the April National School Lunch Program free and reduced lunch rates, and those are the numbers that we actually use. And they are auditable, so we make sure we get them straight off the plane. Once you have those numbers in, you have to rank them. And again, the system allows you to do this, so we generally rank by low income within the district. And once it does that, the system then tells us what allocation we need to do per building. Again, it goes by low income. Okay? So you have the total allocation, and then it gets broken out by the building, depending on this. Once we have that, we have to actually write the grant and make sure that whatever we wrote into the budget pages matches to the allocation of each school. it gets to be quite tedious, and that's kind of where my office and Annabelle sit around the table for an extended period of time, going, okay, wait a minute, which school has how much left, and, you know, those kinds of things. Also, we take care of making sure that the function and objectability accounting codes are correct. There is some interpretation. I will tell you that some areas of the state board for grants have one interpretation of what expenditures, which function it should be in, and another one will have a different one. So you kind of get used to who you're dealing with the state and what their interpretation of the accounting codes are. It's not significant, but we'll have some back and forth with the state board on that. Once the programming is determined, and Annabelle's going to get into that, she starts implementing the program, invoices are submitted, payroll is put through, those things are followed, standard operating procedure. Quarterly, we will report to the state board on what actually has been expended on the grant. And annually, my office will take care of the title comparability report, because again, that's more facts and figures. What the comparability report does is it takes how many students per staff you have in your non-title buildings compared to your title building. Since Parker is the only junior high, it's kind of excluded from this, but Western Avenue is put in as our baseline, so you can see for this year, we have approximately 9.66 students per certified staff member at Western Avenue, and then the other buildings have to come in under that, or that we have higher staffing levels at the title building. And that reporting and more facts figures, it comes from my office.
Is that, when you say staffing, is it certified teachers or is it the staff in the building, which is assistants?
I'm sorry, it's overall staff in the building.
Okay.
So I'll talk a little bit about our current programming, and we've made efforts this year to have more cohesion and consensus between our title schools around what resources we are identifying with our title funds and what we are spending the funds on, and making sure that they're aligned to the building SIP plans as well as the needs of our district. So in terms of resources, tangible resources that we've allocated title funds for this year, the libraries, remember the classroom libraries we bought with local funds, but we also were able to buy libraries with the title funds from Fonis and Pinnell and the level of text as well. The Fonis and Pinnell intervention kits, which were for literacy as well. Various math interventions at all of our title schools, ELL support materials and manipulatives. The creative writing course was one of the programs that we funded with the title funds that's going on right now. Resources to support our specials teachers, our art, music, PE, those classes, and then after-school program support and materials. Also professional development. We've used allocations to support our restorative justice practices, our conferences that we've attended, our teacher evaluation and student growth, so all of the professional development that the Consortium for Education Change does with us around our teacher evaluation model and training around Danielson is provided by the title funds. Our work with Northwestern and the Center for Talent Development around our gifted education, and then various PDs around math, writing, PE, our healthy hotspots training for PE, our social studies work with our consultants, those are title programs as well. And then in terms of staffing, our paraprofessionals support our title workers are obviously funded from this program. In the past, we've probably spent more on professional development than we have on tangible resources, and we're trying to balance that. My office is definitely trying to balance that more. And in terms of how we're doing this, the processes that we've set in place for building level expenditures, our office provides guidance to the building leadership around very simply what the funds are, what the allocation is for their school, and some general guidelines around reading and math initiatives. Our principals are instrumental in identifying what their school teams need based on their SIP plans. Our principals know what they need. their teams know what they need. They do a great job of responding and getting input from their staff to make sure that they're covering all of their bases within the building. And of course, following state guidelines. I don't know everything, and title rules and regulations are always changing. ESSA is coming up for sure. I keep Isby on speed dial and ask questions when we need to and find the answers and get it back to our principals. And of course, at the end of the day, all of the expenditures that are being suggested by principals and buildings come through my office and through Fran as well, and we are making sure that we get the stamp of approval on everything, all of the programming that is being purchased, as well as the professional development. I can tell you that all of the, what we've allocated for is what we are doing. So checks and balances, I'm going back and saying, is this accurately reflecting what we're doing? If not, take it off the plate. Let's find something that's more productive for our students and for our schools. And that's how we're hopefully getting to greater consistency in our programming. And then lastly, I don't know, we have some professional development around title coming up that I am wanting all of our buildings to participate in on a more consistent level. We have the Illinois Title Directors Conference coming up in April that all of our principals will be attending, and as well as just, again, that day-to-day ongoing support from our ISB representatives and our consultants who are there at the state level to answer our questions. Long-term for 2017-18, we have the ISB Fall Conference, and then there will be an ESSA conference, which is sort of the, we talked about this a while back, this is the new legislation that will impact all of these programs, so we all need to be up to date on that. And then we have the Illinois Spring Conference that we'll attend as well. Our goal is really to just get more consistent professional development for all of us, district level, also at the school level, so that there's more consistency and accountability across the board.
Any questions or comments?
So, as we go through this, the expectation is that we are looking to spend it all. We're going to get those, we're not early reports if it's not wise. So that's what we expect, right?
Yes, that our goal is to not leave funds on the table. We have recently allocated our revised carryover funds that we got for this year. And again, all of those things are current. There's some question around the only thing that we need to discuss further and identify where we're going with is the contract with Governor State University, which I've spoken to Fran and Dr. Pop about as well, in terms of where does it accurately fit into the actual programming that we're doing day to day. And that's a discussion that we need to have and come to some agreement on. Other than that, we will spend all of our funds and we're very committed to that.
Is that the restorative justice
It is.
for
but-
Governor State?
Yes, and if you think back earlier in the school year, that was the professional development that was going to be FIU courses as well as some surveys, and they did some opening day activities with us. It is, however, not the only restorative justice programming that we have. We have administrators who recently went to the training on it, and there are lots of things happening around the peace circles and other restorative justice items in our schools, so that is not part of the governor's state contract, if you will.
So do we actually have an executed contract with Governor State?
We do not. So we have your approval, and then it never received a signature from the superintendent at the time. And so we have a meeting with them, I think this week, I think it's Wednesday, to talk about what that next step really is.
And the board approved that there's, I
Yes,
just can't recall at the moment.
yes. I can pull that one and email out to the board to tell you what it is you approved.
Okay. And so you are revisiting that contract?
Yes, because because of the transition that happened, all the timelines in it are no longer valid. And so it's really a matter of what it is that they can provide and that we can access that would be meaningful for us right now before I were to make a decision on what are we doing with
I
it.
mean, I remember having a lot of questions about the contract, so that's why I asked you, you
Yeah.
did approve that, because I don't quite
Yes.
remember. So I think it's great to revisit that, because there has been a lot of time that has
Yes.
lapsed, and I know that we have staff in the district who have received a lot of training, and a lot of this work has already been going on. I mean, so if you revisited that,
Yes.
I would probably have a whole new set.
All right, sounds good.
I have a question. And I just want to go back for a minute with the Title I funds, and I don't know, that's why I'm asking. So if we were talking about building a STEM or STEAM program, anything out of this, could we use Title I funds to do that, or at least to do a ground level?
That's an area that I think we want to tread carefully. Because I think, again, we need to remember that what we need to build is what is our foundation? And then Title I is supplemental on top of what is our foundation and what it is we expect to do for all students. And then Title I goes on top of that. So if we were to say that a STEM lab was only for our Title buildings, then no. If that's what you say, that, those are the buildings. If we're saying no, that, STEM is what we want for all students to have, then we kind of need to look at that a little differently. So that's one of the areas that I do, we've had a lot of conversations about what should be spent when it comes to STEM out of the Title, and what we need to take a little harder look at and say, okay, well, what is our expectation that all students get, because that's not Title I. So those are some conversations that we've been having. Yeah, it's one of those areas, it's like, oh, okay, let's not run, and let's think this through first. Just curious.
Can you just calendar a couple of events for us? So when is the deadline? Like, when do the funds need to be spent? When do you need to completely exhaust the current allocation? And then when does the district submit the proposal and all the documentation for next year's? When does that planning start?
The end of the grant year is generally June 3rd. You can extend to August 31st, in which case you would have 2 grant years that would overlap. Cleanly, we'd like it to be June 30th. Makes a little sense. Allocations,
Excuse me, you have to apply for an extension, sorry.
yes, that would just be an amendment. Allocations are generally out sometime mid-May, beginning June. And then it's the writings. They do not give you a hard deadline on when it has to be in, although it is recommended by mid-September. They're usually going, hey, what are we going to get? Because remember, what you need is what's called substantial approval before you can begin any payment, any spending. So your grant, they consider the grant to be substantially approved once it's actually hit these tests. At that point in time, you can start spending money on items that generally have been approved in the past. So for example, our Title I aids, those paraprofessionals that work, so long as the grant is sitting down in ISB's queue, we can start spending money on our payroll and so on. If the grant is not hit downstage, we cannot start spending anything until it is.
So what's our district's plan in terms of when?
I personally like to see it at ISB's desk no later than August 1st, so that we can start planning on payrolls.
And does that mean that we really can't plan for Title I aids until August? Or is that something that we can kind of say, okay, we think that probably this will be, we can forecast, probably we're going to be approved for this.
If
So
we know that some of the monies that we are allocated, remember, we'll already have the allocations, we'll know what the dollars are there. If we're saying we are absolutely doing Title I, paraprofessionals. Then, history here, we have not reduced that force. We've kept them employed and moved forward. We're not sure if we're going to keep that Title I parapros in a whole different category than the other parapros, so that if we weren't sure if we were going to use the money for those aides, we would reduce force and let go of those paraprofessionals until we knew what we were doing. That has not been the history here. We've found that, they are very useful, that they're needed. I have no reason to believe that we're going to be suggesting other than the same. It's just that their salaries cannot be paid from those federal grants until that grant is in the hands of the state.
Do we think we will get a higher allocation next year?
Honestly, I don't know because I don't know. That's kind of a question that everyone sits around. There's generally a conference at the beginning of May, the state board puts on, and everybody is there clamoring to try and get an idea of what they think the allocation for the next year is going to be. They haven't moved dramatically in the last 7 years, I'd say. And I have no reason to believe that they're going to move dramatically right now, but I don't know what changes as of now. So we're kind of waiting like everyone else on what those allocations are.
So I know that, is there an opportunity for us to at least get back to the level that we were at before we lost funds this past year?
We never lost allocation. The allocation was always the same. It was whether or not all of the money in that grant year was expended. And it wasn't. So what the state board allows is for you to carry over 15% into the next year. Okay? So you cannot spend 15% of your grant and still have it added to your allocation in the next year. It's once you go over that 15% allocation that you lose the money because you didn't use it. But your current year allocation doesn't diminish.
Okay, so I guess that's my question. So the allocation, so regardless of what the amount that rolled over or did not roll over, the actual
It wasn't a
allocation.
cumulative effect.
So the actual allocation amount that we would be awarded is what, okay, yes. That was the question.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much. Certainly appreciate it. Next on the agenda, we have a special education update, part of our strategic plan curriculum and assessment, Bill 2. Dr. Pop.
Rob is up, I'm just going to keep handing off here.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. So included in your board packet was a special education update. I just kind of want to go through very quickly some of the numbers. So right now we have, this is a snapshot in time. Special education ebbs and flows, but our snapshot in time right now as of I think the 21st of February are these numbers. We have total 326 eligible students. IEPs, we have 317. We have service plans. The service plan is a plan written for a parochial school student, so they don't get an IEP because they're not part of the public school, but they do have limited rights and limited service as is decided. And we have 3 people that decline services. One, an older student, but mostly our declines are preschool age. They don't want they're at a preschool full day and ours is only half day, or walk-in speech is 30 minutes and they can't get on here during the school day, no matter when we offer it, so they just decline. They opt to decline service. So that's a quick snapshot of where we're at. We have service locations within the district. We have walk-in speech, and when I say walk-in speech, it's for a preschool student ages typically 3 to 5 that we've discovered through the child find process.
Either they've been referred from the parent, a lot of local preschools will refer students to our preschool screenings or our child find activities. And we have, in the past, they had one speech path that was earmarked to be the walk-in speech path. So say it was at Western Avenue 1 year, it may have been at Flossmoor Hills. Those are the 2 buildings with our youngest, with our pre-K and our EC classrooms. And I honestly don't know offhand without looking at where it was earmarked last year. When I came in and I looked at the caseloads, everybody's caseload was relatively even except Serena's, which is a little bit lower. But I felt it was really important for kids to get established at home school. So we had the students, and we only have 2, 3, 4 maybe at each building of walk-in speech, so that they're distributed to each of their home schools. They may live across the street from the school. That did make sense for them to have to travel with them to another location. So they're at home school. The next, we have resource classrooms in every building. Every building has resource teachers, is really what I should say, and classrooms where they can provide service. The next is instructional. Our instructional level students, the difference between resource and instructional, very generally, please understand, very generally is 50% or less of their time is involved in special ed would be resource. That's really general. And usually it's a lot less than that. And more than 50% is at the instructional level, where they just really need that reading and the math, science and social studies in that smaller environment. They're working at a more challenging level, the low grade level for them. And we have instructional classrooms. Our early childhood is considered an instructional classroom, and that's at Western Avenue. Our Western Avenue also houses the K-1 classroom. 2-3 is at Heather Hill. 4-5 is also at Heather Hill, and then 6-7-8 is at Park. We also have our students at other service locations. We work with SPEED as our cooperative. We're a member of the SPEED co-op, but we also utilize ECHO's program and Southwest Co-op. They have different programs that are different specialties. The deaf and hard of hearing is what we use ECHO for, and Southwest has a CD program, which is cognitive. It's a communication development program, but it's really for more kids that have a significant cognitive delay. We also use Public Day. SPEED is also considered a public day school. So SPEED has classrooms, 2 kinds of classrooms. One is satellite classrooms. We host one at Heather Hill. They utilize our location. They rent the space from us. We have one of our students is actually located in that classroom at Heather Hill. It's nice that they're in district, getting that extra layer of support. But SPEED also has classrooms at the SPEED building. So there's the 3 programs, and we have students at all 3 of those programs. Southwest Cooperative also has some other services. They have Braun, which is a version of Independence. SPEED uses the term Independence, and that's their ED population. And then Braun is a different school that also supports that ED population. And sometimes the class is full at one location, or there's reasons why you choose the school you choose, the individual team decision. And then Illinois School for the Deaf. Illinois School for the Deaf is in Jacksonville. It's a residential school. It is free to public school students in the state of Illinois if they meet eligibility requirement, and we have student actually gets there. The other schools that we help host kids at are private day schools. So we pay tuition for those different schools to service our children. And we use, currently have students at Easter Seals, Britain School, Hyde Park Day, and Elam Christian. And they all have very specific programs and different nuances, again, as to why the students are there.
So typically, if students are going to, it's not a case of, okay, where would you like to go? It's more a case of, you have this particular issue we want to address, so we're going to recommend this one over this one. Okay.
Correct. It just depends on what the requirements are, what the child's needs are.
Sure.
And a lot of times there tends to be a behavioral component to some of that. So some of these more specifically, Britain School and Elam and Easter Seals all have a behavioral component that goes with either autism or cognition or just, it's the emotional component as well. So this year, we had 39 new students come into the district with an IEP. So Of those students, 23 were elementary, again, spread across the 4 elementary buildings. And then we had 13 coming to junior high. Of those 13, 8 were 6th graders, 3 were 7th graders, and 2 were 8th graders. Now, this isn't just at the beginning of the year. We just had 3 new students move in the last few weeks, and we have 1 coming in with an IEP that hasn't finished the registration process yet. So it's ongoing throughout the year. But this, again, as of Tuesday, these were our numbers. 39 is pretty, I can't say that it's average. In the school year 12-13, we had 28 new students come in that year, and these are for the year. We're at this point as of right now. 13 new students came in, in 13-14, 20 new students came in. In 14-15, 18 students came in. That was kind of the low. 15-16 last year, we had 43 students for the year, and this year at this point in time, we're at 39 students. Technically, when the student finishes, we'll be at 40. The next slide I have just a little background staffing information. I think it's really important to help you make decisions when we ask for additional staff or when we describe how we're staffing and how we look at things. For a resource teacher, again, very generally, less than 30% of their day gets resource support. Again, most of our students at resource really it's 20% or less, unless they're in a co-taught kind of classroom. Roughly 20 students per caseload. 20 students it's not a mandate anymore, it's really an old mandate, but it's really when you talk with other special directors, that's really kind of where we tend to be at. I have to tell you, 20 students in a small elementary building is really tough because you're crossing 5 or 6 grade levels with 5 or 6 different schedules and meeting the needs of all those kids at all the different times. It is very hard.
So are you saying we are at 20 students, that's where we are currently, 20 students?
No, this is general logistical information.
So where are we?
We have, we're typically smaller than that. It depends on which building you're at. Right around 10 to 12.
We're 10 to 12 students per caseload. So there's no school that has more than 12 per caseload.
Okay, give me 1 second. Parker's very full. So the numbers I have actually are my projections for next year right in front of me, but I can certainly get back to where they're at right now. I've already rolled my numbers to have the conversation about next year.
Which is great, but I would also really, so you're gonna get back, because I'd really love to know how we're doing right now as well.
I can tell you that in.
Well, go ahead and finish, go ahead and finish.
Okay.
We can get back to.
I believe I can give you the gist of it. Maybe not absolutely exact, but the general gist from the numbers I have with me. In early childhood, with a paraprofessional support, they're allowed to have 10 students in a classroom. That means we have 2 sessions. So we have a morning early childhood and we have an afternoon, so it's a total of 20 students. Instructional classes, also with a paraprofessional support, the maximum number of students is 13. So without a parapro, it's 8, and that extra parapro gets you 5. Can you add another parapro and get another 5? The answer is no. So the maximum number in those classrooms at the severity level of the need, because they're contained in that class most of the day, that's what makes it the 13. Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify, say that you have 10 kids in, from early childhood, do they have the same need, or is it really cross-categorical?
Early childhood tends to, well, all of our instructional classrooms tend to be cross-categorical. But early childhood absolutely is cross-categorical. We have a lot of students that come in under the developmental delay label,
Okay.
which could be a smattering of a variety of things. More significant speech with some occupational therapy needs or some motor delays. It just really depends on the individual child. Some children do come in, and we have identified clearly what we believe their eligibility area to be and not put it under the catch-up developmental delay. Maybe autism or, again, a severe speech and language student would fall under just speech, would fall under just speech. It's really a team decision, and when they look at the child and when they decide what eligibility criteria best meets the needs and the description of the child.
Sure. Okay.
So the additional resources you asked for.
For Parker?
Yeah, was it Parker? Did that make the class sizes smaller, or what were those? Because there's two, right? One was to do evaluations and the other one was?
We asked for an additional resource teacher to help support the classes that were existing.
Okay.
And those class numbers, the special ed numbers were considerably higher at Parker.
Where are they? And I guess I'm asking,
Do we have that assistant?
yeah. Okay,
The assistance is in place at Parker.
so it's helping to drop kind of the numbers to ratio of,
We didn't drop the ratio numbers, we just provided extra support in those classrooms, because to drop the ratio numbers at that point would have been significant classroom schedule changes. So rather than making a tremendous amount of changes at that point, we brought in extra support to kind of provide more support per student ratio versus getting the numbers, the percentages to be the 70-30 percentages.
So was that the request for the contractual?
The contractual was an evaluation for psychologists,
Okay.
different than resource teachers.
So the resource, so you hired a resource teacher,
Yeah,
full-time resource teacher?
correct. Well, the Parker administration,
Well, of
yes.
course. Okay, I'm sorry. You can
Okay.
finish that and we'll get back to where we are today.
So, and then the last thing that I really wanted to look at today was the speech numbers. A maximum caseload is really 60 students. There isn't much, that's a really hard number to manage. It's a lot of students, a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, and it doesn't take into account what they're doing with the student. If every kid, every student was 30 minutes of articulation, I think even that would be very difficult to manage with 60 kids in the school day, across the 5 days with meetings and meeting all those minutes. So we really, right now, I look to 45 students as really the top edge of what we'd like it to be. And that depends on also the quantity of minutes that they have and what their needs are. So all of our speech numbers are below 45 caseloads, but they're close. They're like 38, except one, which is low.
Do we have a history of numbers for kids in speech therapy?
I could get it, I don't have it, I didn't process it, but we are projected for next year, that's the numbers I have here. I have, for Flossmoor Hills, I have a projected 37 students for 1,680 minutes. Again, a snapshot in time, it could go up, it could go down before the end of the year. At Heather Hill, I have a projection of 37 students, but 1,800 minutes. So about 1,880 minutes, so about 200 minutes more for the same number of students. Heather Hill also has the instructional programs, which tend to have students tend to have more language needs and also qualify for speech in those classrooms. And that's a generalization though. For Serena Hills, we have 24 students with 1,200 minutes. And at Western Avenue, we have 39 students with 2,233 minutes. And Western Avenue has our early childhood program. So there's usually a significant amount of speech development. Serena Hills, our speech path at Serena Hills also helps out at Western a little bit of the time. And she also does our parochial school and services those students. That's kind of how we balance out those pieces. The Parker caseload for next year looks to be 43 students, almost 1,000 minutes in 6th grade, 650 minutes in 7th grade, and 250 minutes in 8th for a total of 1,800 minutes. So really, even the high end of all the buildings.
so are you looking into next year with Parker to still keep that large capacity of provide resources, or are you going to do something different? finish or to get a smaller class size, or that's not possible?
Let me try answering the question. The ratios next year, when we're projecting and working on those classes, and Parker is working very hard to figure out the schedule. And once that schedule is put in place, we'll work within that to figure out where special ed, the special ed is figuring into where the schedule will be, but we'll figure that out. We don't want to have those class sizes over. We're going to work really hard to make sure they stay below that 70-30% split.
Well, I asked you, is it just from a resource standpoint, or, because we got for additional resource to help our classroom, right? So if we
Correct.
want to take the small, might be coming back and ask for it, and like a teacher, I'm just kind of in my head.
Yes, on the next
You,
page.
yeah.
Next
Yes,
page.
it's coming right up.
Up.
There it is. Wait,
There you go.
Up.
there it is.
So based on everything that's occurred this year and based on the numbers and the projections, our numbers keep increasing and how many students are moving in. So we can do lots of projections and give a good estimate of we can roll all our kids up. That's what we do. We just kind of roll them up to the next grade and see where they're falling. And then I think in another one or two presentations, you'll hear the forecast of the students incoming. But last year we had a slight aberration, and it was really high. And there were a lot of students that came in with, new students that came in and students with IEPs. So that 8 students at Parker made really a tremendous difference. But it is my goal to work with the case manager at Parker and the new scheduling at Parker and the Parker administration to make sure that we balance out those classes and leave room in them so that we don't have a 70-30 issue again and don't have to come back mid-year or the beginning of the year and say, we need more support. If we're coming back next year in the fall, it's because there was a significant move in, a tremendous number of people that moved in. But to offset that, because we're really planning for it and we're really looking at the history numbers, even with a little bit of aberration that happened last year, is we're requesting 2 additional Parker research teachers. The caseload numbers for Parker next year with the 8th grade class graduating, which was the smallest class, 7th grade moving up would be 25 students in resource. 7th grade would have 29, and 6th grade right now, walking in the door would have 19. Remember last year it had 8. So it's almost adding what I would consider like not quite a full baseline.
So what's the current caseload right now?
The caseload is under 20. Each of the teachers have less than 20 kids that they're responsible for monitoring paperwork under teacher of record status. But the classes that they're in are full. So we have a few classrooms that are below 30%. In fact, a lot of the classrooms I believe are, but there are a significant number that are higher than that 30%, 70-30 ratio of special ed to general ed. That was one of the reasons why that suggestion was to bring in another resource teacher to help support that. So that classroom now has 3 teachers. It has 2 resource supports for the special education students in the room, as well as the general education teacher.
And that classroom or those classrooms that you're just referring to, if it's not 70-30, what is your sense of what they are?
I think some of them are 31, some are 32. There's one that is considerably higher. I think it's 37. I don't have that data with me, but I can back.
So is it fair to say that we actually could use 2 additional resource staff right now in Parker?
I don't feel comfortable answering that without re-looking at all the classes and re-looking at where the resource teacher was placed and how they were divided out and which classes they were not had. And so you back to the answer.
So do you have any thoughts?
My questions around, to be able to answer that would be, how does that impact any students' schedules? Going back to what Robin said before, that if you're adding at this point, does it change? And I don't know the answer to it, I'm just throwing it out there. I think you hear the logistics from the building staff. If it causes us to move a bunch of kids, I would be hesitant to do it.
Well, and I'm not even saying that that's possible. I guess what the bigger goal of my question is I'm trying to get a sense of, because it sounds like the ratio is not where we would like to have seen it be this past year at Parker. And so, thank goodness you got an assistant to come in and help. And I know you came in after that, so that's great that we were able to get someone. But I want to get a sense of, are we providing a sufficient amount of resources to these kids at Parker that we would ordinarily be doing under ordinary circumstances? And if not, then how do we measure, how do we deal with that next year? If that makes sense. I mean, the question's kind of in my head, but, so I want to get a sense of, since I know we had a challenging start in this year, half the year is over. So how are our kids doing at Parker? And, are we getting them all that we possibly could be getting them to make sure that they're all ready to be pulled up to the next grade?
How do we hedge our bets this year?
Exactly.
The eighth grade resource caseload at Parker is lower this year. It is, we are graduating 24 in-district eighth grade students. That is resource and our instructional program combined. I know that teacher also services some of the parochials. There's some parochials too. Like I think there's one that's also an eighth grade student that is graduating. And then we are also graduating some other students that are out of district as well. So seventh grade, I know, had a slightly higher caseload, but sixth grade was where we had the most. So I know that there was one or two seventh grade classrooms from memory that was bigger. I would much rather get you the from data.
Just a minute, I just want to, I may not be saying the same thing, because I hear some really good preparation for next year, which is great, because I'm hearing these. What is kind of just hitting me a little bit here is that it kind of feels like sometimes for the presentations like this year's a wash. Like, well, we didn't have it this year, but we're gonna do a great makeup job next year, which is, this is really, I'm glad we're doing this, but it's March, right? It's almost March, the question is, do we have, so that these kids don't have a year that was lost, that they are getting the right support? And the answer is, yep, you've got the resources to have them to make sure that they have a good year, not that we're preparing for next year, but so it kind of comes across in those presentations, and that's why I'm trying to make sure that I'm hearing it right.
Well, I think that.
And I don't mean to say that you're saying wash your hands, kids, so I don't know what I'm trying to say. What I was trying to say is what are we doing now?
I think bringing in a resource teacher was definitely advantageous. It was a discussion that we weren't going to change all of their schedules around a number of different students to rebalance those classrooms. There is that extra support now that is in those classrooms. I know I heard one teacher make a comment that her classroom that has a higher percent of special education students were doing really, really well. So that's not scientific data, that's not Rutgers data, but she was like really excited about, you should come to see this period of my classroom, they're doing so well. And I don't think it was in reference to their special ed that they're doing so well. I think it was just this period of my day, they're doing great. So I think we put that support in place to make it not a wash, not to wash out the
I
year.
take back the word, I shouldn't even use it like that.
Now, I think we put in that in place to provide significant support or a balance of support to help those students to make sure we're meeting their needs.
How would you quantify, like what data would you look at to quantify the answer to how are our students doing this year? Would you be looking at IEP goals or just the progress in whatever else is used to
We
measure?
can look at the growth data across math, same as we would look at a general education student. We could also look at their goals and see if they're meeting their goals, at what percentage they're meeting the goals. Goals are hard because it depends on the time of year, because IEPs are written at all different times. So the math data is they started the same with the general ed and they're taking it at the same time with the general ed. So we can look at those and we can pick up those classrooms that have a higher proportion of special education students and look at that information.
Actually, Mark, a good point. Is there a particular time where you've seen a a trend where IEP goals, or someone is identified and then has the initial IEP meeting? Is it typically in September? And in my experience, I've seen them all over the place.
Right.
I don't know if that's
Well,
true.
one of the things for us, when we inherit students or when students age into our programs at 3, it's always by their birthday. So our requirements are if they're transitioning from early intervention services to us, we have to have them identified and have a meeting and services if services are to be put in place by their 3rd birthday. That can be a challenge sometimes because we're reliant on the parent to bring them and work with us to accomplish that. But then eligibility happens all throughout the year. So we may have students that we were monitoring in the spring, and those are the cases that we look at their math data in the fall and look to open a case. Typically, a lot of cases get opened around parent-teacher conferences. It's just really, it's the quarter of the year, the 3rd of the way into the year, and they've looked at data. It just depends on what also the special education scenario is. If we're looking at specific learning disability, we need significant data to show that interventions aren't helping or aren't supporting those students. But if it's autism that might come out at a different time, or traumatic brain injury, or ADHD, all of those things aren't dependent. They're dependent on lack of progress in school to a point, but not like specific learning disability.
So is there, with that said, is there specific report outs in place where at the end of the trimester, or at the end of the quarter, there's a report that goes?
We also work really closely together with our data days. So we do the benchmarking, and then they look at students to provide interventions based on their scores.
Okay.
And then we look at how those interventions are helping the students. And from those days, then we look at what students are making progress or not making progress. And we look to change them from maybe out of tier 1 to tier 2 if they need that support, or tier 1 to tier 3, depending on what they need. And then those students are looked at eventually for special education. There's a process.
Okay, because the RTI, the MTSS is a separate entity than IEPs.
Yeah, they're kind of, there's a lot of, there's a process to it. Yes.
You had a slide on this, Robin. How many new IEPs are there this year?
There's 13 that moved in.
That moved in.
Not necessarily, we may have identified students, but this slide just talks about our move-ins.
Oh, okay.
So these people came into the district, these students came in and I have an IEP.
So we have 13 new to the district. Do you know the number of new students who were not new to the district who were identified for the first time?
Do I know that? Yes. Do I have it with me? No.
That would be an interesting number to know. So I appreciate the overview. Obviously our goal, which I'm sure is the same as yours, is that we want to make sure that our students throughout the district, but particularly at Parker, are absolutely getting all of the intense services that they need so that they can be successful moving forward next year. So getting a clear idea on the interventions that are happening now and what's the plan. And I absolutely appreciate all the forward thinking. So it sounds like we will be more prepared for whatever there is to come next school year. We want to make sure, and not to use your wash word, but we want to make sure we still allow time to talk about what's happening this year and not be too quick to talk about what's happening next year until we can fully understand, at least from the board's perspective, what's going on this year.
Are there any further comments or questions?
I have one more slide.
Oh, so sorry.
So, not to pay attention to this year, but to forward think to next year and to look to our planning, one of the recommendations really is 2 additional resource staff at Parker. I don't want to lock anything in by saying that would be 2 at 6th grade, 2 resource teachers at 7th grade, and 2 resource teachers at 8th grade, but that's the gist. The numbers are supporting that. I would, you know, if I were to look at it and help design it today, I would say that I want one of the 8th grade resource teachers to continue to do the parochial, because that's, again, there's about 25 students. I'm anticipating at least 10 6th grade move-ins. So I'd really, you know, like to make sure we had the 6 resource teachers. Right now, I consider Parker at 4. They had the 3 that they started the year with, the 1 additional we put in place to provide that support, and it would be 2 additional resources for next year. Again, it's speculation, a little bit of speculation, maybe like 1 resource teacher speculation, but crossing grade levels at Parker with I don't know what the new schedule will look like, but it tends to be challenging to cross grade levels, to work in multiple grades. I know people do it all the time, and I give them a lot of credit. If we have a little maturity of it, I would say sometimes it's easier just to be at a grade level, and then you're really focusing on your group of students that you're working with, and those teachers that you're working with. And it's better all around. In addition to that, based on the speech and language numbers I gave you, they all sounded right around the same. One of the things that's really important to know is right now Parker's only at 3 days a week. We have a contracted person who comes in and services our students. We'd like to make that a full-time position by adding 0.4 FTE. So it would be a full-time position. And then we would offer that through a district employee. One of the other things, I talked to you earlier in the year about the evaluations and how we needed a psychologist. Our psychologist resigned effective the first week or so of September. What I'd like to do, one, we'll be starting interviewing really soon to hire for a psychologist for next year. Again, I told you that the problem was all the internships are a year, they're hard to get even in August. It was there was no way I was finding anybody. I contacted multiple agencies and didn't have any luck until we hired the retired psychologist, which she's been wonderful. Michelle was outstanding. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to bring in some psychology interns. They have to do a full year, they haven't graduated yet. They have to do a full year internship. They're doing their full year internship under our direction of our psychologist that's here. And our psychologist has the minimum requirements needed to host an intern. We've had an intern reach out to us from Illinois State University, and we will be, vetting her and interviewing her coming up. We're hoping to maybe have a second intern because it would really help benefit the whole district. Interns are great, and then if you're training your own, and if by chance we lose a psychologist, then we would have somebody to hire. If we needed to expand our program, we've trained them, we could have someone, to bring in. So a psychology intern also has a very minimal cost to the district. So I'll talk more about that when I bring that to the table. Some discussion points for next year. I think it's really important to think about. I think it's really important, I agree with you, that Parker has what it needs to support our students, but all the research shows that early intervention is really the key to providing as much support at the younger grades and support when they need it at the older grades. But the more support you provide at the younger grades, hopefully you can help remediate situations before they become larger and larger problems. So to that end, I'm hoping that we can look to bring in some additional preschool classrooms. We have the Preschool for All grant right now. It is up for competitive bid again next year. We've already put in our intent to bid for that grant. But it only, at this point, the monies we have cover not even fully the one classroom that we have. But I'm hoping that we will write the competitive grant and gain more classroom space, or ask that we really look at that as a consideration for having more preschool classrooms available to our parents and children. Possibly an additional instructional level teacher. I am looking at the needs of our students. We have a number of students that are outplaced at either speed or other programs that we may be able to service in a classroom here in district. But I have to make sure that the program design is really fits the needs of those students, not that we create a design and put them in this box. Like, I really want to make sure that those students have what they need before I would bring them back from a program that might be working for them. But of course, we always look to home school or home district as one of the best places. So that, I'm still working on that. I just wanted to kind of give you that heads up that that might be something that we're looking into, have that additional classroom. In addition to those, a resource teacher for Heather Hill. All of our other elementaries have 2 resource teachers. Heather Hill has 1. Heather Hill has had the smallest caseload number, but it started this year at 5 or 6. It's now at 10, and I know that there's a number of students still in the pipeline. Again, a lot of those students came, we had quite a few move in that had significant needs, that needed special education, but we also had some that were kind of in the pipeline from the year before that have been evaluated and have qualified for special education. And likewise, I just want to alert you, as I mentioned, we can only have 13 students in an instructional classroom. The classroom at Heather Hill right now is at 13. There is no more room for another instructional student. So every time a student moves in, I pray that they're not instructional at more than this. But if they are, we will figure out how we service them and we will take care of it. But at this point, the room next year is slated to open at 11 students. And this year I had 3 students move into the program from within the beginning of the year. So that is really, it's over the number and it's too tight. So that's just kind of giving you a heads up that we might, hit that maximum where we would really have to open another classroom. I don't want to open another classroom right now, having 2 instructional classrooms at 6 isn't really as financially responsible as we need to be. So, right now.
What are the alternatives though?
There's some alternatives. We have a classroom right now that's a 2-3 in the building. So if it's a 4th grader, we might be able to put a 4th grader in with the 2nd and 3rd graders. It's not necessarily my best option. We can also group a little bit differently. The resource teacher there might be able to pull some kids at each of the class periods so that the room doesn't have the maximum. Like we're using like a secondary location that would also support some resource students, some of the higher students in that classroom. Right now we are doing that for our resource teachers, pulling I think 3 students that are in a higher level group from the instructional. It's still instructional because but they're not under that teacher, they're under her. So we're doing some things already to meet the needs of the students in that building because the research teacher has a little bit of flexibility in her schedule. So I would utilize that.
So your recommendation for next year will include additional staff at Parker, additional staff at Heather, in just those 2 schools?
Well, my recommendation right now is 2 additional staff at Parker and making the speech full-time. My warning, this might come to fruition, are these below the discussion line. These are still, I'm carefully speculating because again, I don't want to have what happened this year. I don't want to be caught not having the right number of staff to meet the needs of our students.
And in your projections or speculation, you are assuming we have the correct amount of staffing at our other schools?
Yes. Do we have the correct amount of staff in our other schools? That's what you said, right?
Yes. For next year,
Yes.
based on your
Based on the numbers, the projections do indicate that. And if the speech levels stayed the same, I would still have Serena Hills supporting some time at Western Avenue and doing the parochial, and that would round out her placement.
And the additional assistants that you hired, that's a full-time certified teacher?
The resource teacher for Parker this year? Yes.
Well, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. It was very informative.
You're welcome. I also we're giving a presentation at Heather Hill that I'd just like to show, if I can share the PowerPoint. If it has enough detail, I like to not read my PowerPoint, so I don't tend to put a ton of details on them, but
And so since a lot of this is projections for 17, 18, when will projections be less projections and more real numbers that we have something to respond to?
Yeah, very soon. So you're going to hear a presentation here shortly, enrollment projections for the rest of the district. And once we all are seeing what those numbers are, we're getting close to being able to say, here's what our FTE needs will be for next year. The real piece that, like right now, if we, I think we know elementary pretty well. I think we know special education pretty well. Right now, I don't know Parker very well. And that's our, once we land on that schedule, once we land on the other services we want to offer there, then we'll be bringing that to you. I would love to say that we're going to do that at the next meeting. I would love to say it. I can't guarantee it at the moment, but I would love to do it then. Again, because I'd like to get the postings out there. I'd like Fran to be able to weigh in and say, yes, we can do this within the projected budget, and so on. And so that's the piece that, that she and I are always worried about. Looking at these necessities here, like we have to have these people that we just talked about. Now it's a matter of how do we make all that fit within the budget? Where do we find those dollars?
Fantastic. So, thank you again. Next on the agenda, we have the Parker After School Program. Dr. Hopkins.
And we have Vicki and Shanika coming up, and I want to say thank you to them. The document that you have in front of you is, well, it's a nice way to look at all the different things our kids are able to do after school. And so thank you both for putting that together. And we have talked in the past about after-school programming, so we wanted to give a few minutes for you to be able to share with us. Have anybody ask any questions? So thanks for joining us.
Sure, good evening. I'm glad you guys got a copy. As you can see, there's a plethora of things going on at Parker School at any given time. So in addition to being the assistant principal, Ms. Fountain is also the athletic director. So she's going to give you a little briefing on some of the athletics that's going on, and then I'll wrap it up with after school.
Good evening, board. Just as Dr. Person has said, we have a lot of activities going on at Parker School that we're very proud of. I'm not going to read you, as you can see, it's a very large list. I just will highlight some things, and you can look to see the events and actually the time that these activities do take place. We're very proud of our sports program. We do have cross-country, baseball, softball, girls and boys basketball, girls and boys volleyball, and also track teams and our cheer team. I do want to congratulate our teams on this year for our cross-country team, our girls basketball team, and also our boys basketball team representing us in state competitions. And we are also very proud of our 8th grade boys team who went downstate, and they became second place in the whole state of Illinois. So we are very proud of our basketball team. And I just want to say that also our students are just not athletes, but they are student athletes, and they have to have certain criteria in order to participate in sports. So they are keeping up their grades, they're doing what they're supposed to do in the classroom in order to participate in extracurricular activities. Also, we have other activities such as the Green Team, we have Student Council, we have a lot of musical programs, band, orchestra, choir. We have Student Council, National Junior Honor Society, and our chess team. And I also like to say that our chess team this weekend, we went to Peoria and stayed for the weekend, and our students participated in the chess tournament where they got to compete with about 500 other students from across the state of Illinois in the chess competition. So we were very proud that we were able to go down with our students to Peoria this weekend and to give them the experience of participating in this chess tournament with all these other schools in the state of Illinois.
Thank you. They enjoyed the breakfast at the hotel. They did tell me that, so thank you guys for that. And then, of course, we're super excited to finally begin to offer our after-school academic program. So, first of all, an amazing shout out to our amazing curriculum director. It's finally secured some curriculum that we can use for ELA / writing and math. So on your handout, you can see the ELA writing is a Scholastic on the Records program. There's physical material for this. The teacher kits have been ordered. They're here. We're waiting on the student material. It should be here this week. And then the math is Blue Streak. And it is web-based. There's pre and post assessments, and that's how the kids will be placed. Administrators will be trained. We'll be talking to these vendors on Wednesday. And after we get all of our questions and everything secured, then we're going to bring this to our teachers who have already applied, so to speak, to teach the after school. We're trying to launch, we will launch on this coming Tuesday. It will be 3 nights a week. We currently already have activity buses that are running on Tuesdays and Thursdays that pick the kids up at 4:05. So the time frame will be the same. The teacher contract day ends at 3:05, so after school is 3:05 to 4:05. We just have to secure a bus for Wednesday, and we are working with the district office to take care of that so that we can provide transportation for our students. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're excited. The permission slips went out this evening. And we're hoping to get them all in by Thursday so that we can begin to look at the number of students. We have an idea. We want it open to as many students that want it. And so we've got to look and see. All of our kids are not going to play basketball and volleyball and so forth and so on. So once we get those permission slips back, we'll begin to meet with the teachers, Ms. Crawford, and they'll have a pre-assessment, and then we'll begin to place them. We do have enough teachers. We're not sure. We're trying to do a small ratio. Of course, after school is kind of like summer school. The smaller the number, the better. So we'd love to have it at a 10-to-1 ratio. It kind of depends on how many kids want to. If we have an overwhelming amount, then we'll have to revisit or reestablish some guidelines. So we want to run it for the rest of the school year. The ELA program is kind of like a book club, so they'll be reading books, and then the math will be focusing on skills. So this will be supplemental to what they're already getting in the classroom. So if there's an overwhelming amount, which if it is, that's great, then perhaps we'll look at breaking it up by weeks and sections. And so maybe they'll have 4 to 6 weeks of something, and we'll kind of switch them off. But we do have enough teachers we believe to take care of that. And this is thanks to wonderful Title I, so we're excited about this.
How many teachers did you have apply?
I have 8 right now.
And can it only be teachers, or could parents or community members volunteer at the time as well?
Well, actually, I think contractually, we had to open it up to, for the FBA, for the teachers. We have not gotten to where I don't believe the district is opening it up to, we do want certified teachers for this. So I would say no at this point.
Or, well, maybe a different question then could be, if you have a certified teacher in each room or each program, would you be open to parents volunteering?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I do think that
Yes.
you would have a lot of interest from parents who
Yes.
are also educators.
We have a list.
Yes.
And we want
No doubt.
we have a list, and we want to utilize that. We also have some interest in some other after-school clubs and some mentoring and some other things that parents are interested in doing that they don't have to be a certified teacher for. So we want the building to be available to the students and the community, keep them out the streets and out the library, and take it from there. So we're excited.
I know originally when this idea was brought to the board, we made the comment of, we don't want to create a program for the sake of saying we create a program. So is there an assessment piece in this, and how will you look at this at the end of the year and think about how you want to, if you want to continue it next year, or if it's working? I mean, how are you thinking about even measuring whether it's working?
Absolutely. The curriculum was vetted by, again, Ms. Crawford and her team. And both the ELA writing as well as the math has a pre and post. This should be another data point, I believe, along with our national standardized assessments as well as local assessments for how we do place kids next year. And teacher recommendation, I think, should be another, something else we're going to look at, depending depending on. And that will coincide with the summer school criteria whenever we're ready to take applications for summer school as well.
But I think, oh, I'm sorry, I was-
That's great. In terms of the intramurals, is that something that is new? Is it ongoing? Is it?
That is ongoing for sixth grade. Because most of our sports teams right now with our IESA guidelines, we have 7th and 8th graders participating in our sports. So since we don't really have sports for our 6th grade, we do use the intramurals to supplement that, to kind of get them prepared for 7th grade year. Now I can try out for basketball, volleyball, or the other teams. But right now, it's just 7th and 8th grade, and we use intramurals for 6th graders.
Okay, and is that something that has been around for a while? It's pre-existing?
Yes, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Pretty common.
I just want to take this opportunity to have this outside this. I really appreciate this because it's hard to see everything that's going on. Kudos to the school for taking the kids to see Hidden Figures. The movie in and of itself, awesome learning, great for them. Besides that, what you hear, the qualitative data back is that the kids felt trusted to go off-site, that it gave them that sense of, okay, you know, treating me like I'm responsible. Maybe I can be responsible. So I'm not sure if you had challenges or what it was, but that's what the kids came home and talked about. So that's that one. The second is my daughter came home. I don't know if her numbers are totally off or whatever, but so excited because she said we have 200 kids showing up at the 6th, 7th grade dance.
Over 30.
Okay, she said 260, but I wasn't going to push it. So she's like, we had 42 pizzas. And I'm like, okay. But that's indicative of school culture, and we talk about culture climate. What does it look like when it's working? It's when you have kids in the hallway talking about school and the activities, and not what fights are going on or what teacher is blah, 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 but positive things and their favorite teacher and what they learned today when they were debating. So that's happening more and more. So I wanted to just put that out there and say thank you.
And thank you. Hidden Figures was a part of our African American History Month, and we want to give a shout out to the PTO who helped sponsor that. Initially, one of our grade levels came and wanted to go, and we decided, you know what, everyone needs to see this, and it's a great opportunity. I believe in the past they had a gentleman come out and do an assembly. He was unavailable. And so it wasn't fair for the PTO to just kind of go one grade level, so we kind of figured it out price-wise, and it worked out. And there was an educational component to it as well that had after reflections, and the conversations were so rich to keep the students, but even so, some of my staff members that were unaware of the information in the book. So, yeah.
And I just want to add that we took 3 different days because we had a lot of children in Parker, and the feedback that we got from even the theater with bringing 325 kids to the movie theater and letting them get their own pop and pick up their popcorn. They did comment how well-behaved Parker students were, so we definitely appreciate that, and we just want to give our students more the opportunity to go out and experience more things.
And if I can ask them, as you're exploring this and you're looking at giving our students experiences that they can have, Governor State is an amazing resource that other school districts around us have, and they have things like the Scarborough Brothers are coming up there. They have Allen Ellendale's. They have so many different things that you just may want to consider looking at them as a potential resource and support. And they'll also come to your school to agree.
And then to start with them.
Yes.
Is awesome.
That's one of our parents that got me information on that.
Yes.
There's a civil rights museum. It's actually in Cincinnati, but we can do it in a day.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 20 people.
Awesome. Thank you. So it would be great once you have numbers in to just hear back how many students are participating in the after-school stuff. And if there's any, interesting projects, or especially the kids who will be doing the writing program, I mean, we would love to hear some of that, because I know Dr. Pop has been trying to focus on, good stories to tell. And so, we'd really like to hear what's working
in November.
I'm excited, I'm looking forward to the permission slip, so I should have some numbers at the time of the meeting.
But I think one of the interesting things I've seen every year since I've been on the board is that roughly about a third of all the students who graduate from Rager, have been recognized for some special award or honors. And, it is something that, we have to be very proud of. Certainly, I don't remember that being in 8th grade way back, I didn't, but it really is something, when you look at your graduating class and, third to half, that's really a remarkable achievement that they're leading 8th grade with.
And one final thing, we talked a few meetings ago about student input team. That team has been formed, the kids where they put their names. Student input team, I'm sorry, where we have 3 from each grade level, 3 students from each grade level. They put their names in a box if they wanted to meet with Ms. Mountain to talk about some things that they like, don't like, want to see change, want to see us do, or take a look at. And so we have 3 students from 6, 3 from 7, 3 from 8. We'll be meeting with them during enrichment, taking their suggestions, seeing what we can do. So that has started as well. It's our 6th student input team. Okay?
Thank you. See if we get applause on this next one, I think.
Fantastic. Well, that can only be math curriculum update.
Yes.
Next agenda.
And we've indicated this is going to be a staple at our meetings because of all the work that's going on with the Math Curriculum Committee. And so there's been a couple meetings since the last time we heard from Annabelle a couple of weeks ago. So take it away.
So the last time I spoke with you, we were coming up on, just finishing up our first meeting with the math curriculum team. Again, we have 28 teachers right now, teachers and administrators who are participating on the team, including myself, as well as our 2 facilitators from the Consortium for Education Change. They're leading our discussions. We have narrowed it down to overall, we're still at 3 programs, Bridges, Go Math, and Eureka. For Parker, in terms of pilot materials, we have narrowed it down to Go Math and Eureka. We are still in decision-making process for the elementary program. And again, I wanted to share a few things with you today that the team is grappling with. All really good things and high-quality things that we're grappling with. And again, just every time I speak about this committee, I have to really just give them a thank you and a shout out for how much they are really taking this process seriously and committing to it, and that's a really big deal. This is a heavy lift, and it's not an easy job for this team. There are a couple of things. We chose all of these programs based on their ranking on the National Ed Report. So all of the programs that we have are right now on the Ed Report for focus and coherency and rigor are the highest rated programs on the National Ed Report. So what the team is grappling with is taking each grade level and each unit in each program and identifying and making sure that we find evidence of best practices in supporting teaching of the Common Core standards. So that is not an easy task. They're literally taking unit by unit per grade level and hashing out, do we think the evidence is there? Is this a rigorous enough program? With 2 of the programs, with 2 of the programs we have decided for Parker, the other 3 for K-5, some of the discussions that I'm hearing around the table is balancing this dance between rigor and usability. We want something that is tangible for our students. We want something that has all the pieces necessary for our students and for our teachers to be able to access, for students at the lower end of achievement and also for students at the higher end of achievement. Something that I'm stressing with the team in our meeting coming up on Wednesday, where we really do have to make the final call and the final cut for the decision, is that if we are having questions around rigor, that's really where we need to draw the line, and we need to make sure that we're making a tough decision based on that. Because at the end of the day, we're really not teaching this program, whatever program we choose, we're teaching the standards and the program's ability to help us in teaching the standards. So our final date on Wednesday to meet as a full committee, we will walk away with a decision in terms of materials to pilot. Parker is kind of pushed through and made their cut very quickly, and that was great. Our K-5 team has to do the same on Wednesday. I have all confidence that they will, and that with my guidance and with the guidance of CEC, we will make sure that we walk away not just with the best looking or the most accessible product, but with the most rigorous product. One thing that I was advising tables with one of the meetings last week is we really think about all of these programs. Imagine your highest performing student in the class, the student who you're constantly trying to find things to push that student. Does this program meet that student's needs? And then also imagine your lowest performing student in your class who you are working with all the time to pull them up to grade level. Do the programs have something to support that student as well? And we can make some assumptions that there's enough meat in the middle if we're meeting the needs of those two students in the classrooms. But again, it is heavy work. It is very involved work, and I'm very proud of this team, and I'm excited for us to move forward after we make the decision on Wednesday. Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Thank you so much. We look forward to our next update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And because everyone has to have at least 2 or 3 times a day with night, we're back to Fran.
And I'm not sitting this time, I'm the niece.
All right.
Okay, so we started talking a lot about enrollment projections. So let's talk about how we do this, because I think there's a lot of, mystery behind the numbers. When we look at enrollment projections, we use what's called a cohort survival. So what is it? Really basic. I just grabbed numbers from 3rd grade going into 4th grade. And to be honest with you, I don't even know which school this is. I just grabbed one of them, copy and pasted it. So what we do is we take a look at going from 3rd grade into 4th grade every single year. What percentage of students do we have? Did we increase or did we decrease in enrollment? And by how much as a percentage? Okay. So for the most part, you'll see like the negatives will be we actually lost students. Positives, obvious there. 0, they remained absolutely flat. Same number of students from 3rd grade ended up in 4th grade. This doesn't mean they're the same faces, just the same number of bodies. Okay. Positives. It gives us an estimate. It gives us an idea of being able to use history to judge whether we're going to gain students or whether we're going to lose students. Cohort survival works really well when you have a real trend. Okay? Say you usually see 4 to 5% increase or decrease, whatever the case may be. Cohort survival does not work well when you have very large discrepancies year over year. And that's why I brought this one up. When you look at a 5-year average, you're going to see that we're going to grow by about 7%. When you look at a 3-year average, we're going to lose. I mean, you've got from zeros, you've got -8 to a +20 within this grade level alone. So it makes it a little difficult to try and figure out what it's going to be, okay? We generally do not use the 3-year average, it's just too volatile. 5 years smooths it out a little more, and that's what we're using going forward. We're using the 5-year projections, okay? So what does that look like? I tried to color code it so that you can see. I don't know why. Believe it or not, on my screen, this is purple, and when I copy it, it turns orange on me. I don't know. But you can see we're following the children year to year on a diagonal. Okay. These are all actuals, and these 2018 numbers are what we're using based on the 5-year cohort. Now, 5-year, here in the elementary, it's building by building and then added together. So it's not in a total number, it's actually done in school by school. Okay, so we have those numbers by school as well as district as well. What we're seeing based on a 5-year cohort is that you can see from, we took a real hit here in 2010. I tend to think it's kind of a year lag after the housing crisis. Homes stopped being sold, families stopped moving. We kind of took that hit. And we've reasonably stayed flat. We dipped off a little bit in the last year or so. And I believe we're going to see another dip based on 5-year cohort. Okay? This gives you an idea year over year. So you're looking at 2015, 16, 17, and this is projected 18. Now, remember, these are different groups of students. So watch. Go with the 4th grade here, this blue. You can see that group was always a little bit bigger. The next year they became 5th graders. They grew again. The next year they became 6th graders. This is this group. They really, I mean, where they came from, they grew almost 12% again. And we're anticipating they're going to grow again next year, okay? The other thing to note, when you see like our numbers coming down, this year we're looking to graduate out 311 students. But down the other end of the spectrum, we're only taking in 168 kindergartners. What we tend to see happen, just watch the enrollment growth, is that from kindergarten up, we tend to continue to increase numbers as they get older. And especially at the junior high, we've been seeing a lot more spike coming in our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders than we have been seeing in the younger grades. It just gets to be a little more and more every year as they go on. So how accurate is the projection? These numbers are, if I use last year's 5-year cohort to project the numbers that we have in right now. So the red bar is what we actually, the students we actually have in, and this pea nasty color is what the cohort projection model showed we should have had. The model tends to be a little more accurate at the younger grades, and we have our biggest discrepancies are coming in at the 6th and 7th grade level. Not terribly. I mean, especially the younger years, we seem to be pretty accurate, but we do have some discrepancy. But again, keep in mind that the whole idea of this is to give us a projection, an idea of where we're going so we can staff for the next year. So here's your junior high. And again, these are the numbers that I'm most concerned about because junior high seems to be tough to get a handle on. 5th to 6th grade the most. You can see we're going from 3% to almost 13% within that 5-year group. It's real difficult to determine whether we're going to see the 3% or we're going to see the 13%. So what happens when we use a 5-year average, and actually you'll see our 3 and 5 year are both coming in pretty close at about 7.5% to 8% growth. You get nervous using much higher numbers because you end up with more staff, too many staff members. You go too low on that 3%, now you don't have enough. What we want to do is take these estimates and make sure that we're giving ourselves enough wiggle room that we can make determinations and put staff and classrooms together within a range. Okay, but knowing that we're getting some real spikes in that 5th to 6th grade level. We're a lot smoother in the 6th to 7th, and we're a lot smoother in the 7th to 8th, but that 5th to 6th grade year is really problematic. So again, taking a look at Parker enrollment, I find it interesting, if you go once again back to that 2000, these early, like 2007 to 2010, we were flirting around that 1,000 student mark. We really haven't come off of closer to 900 since about 2012. And I believe that's what we're going to be again, is somewhere around that 900 mark, probably a little under. Right now, we're estimating about 87. So flirting with that 900. Again, right now, if you take a look, right now we're sitting on 911 on the numbers that I used at the time when we ran these projections, and still looking at 886, which is 25 less. This number looks large, that's 6 going into this year's 6 going into next year's 6, but I'm going to call your attention back to this number here. Remember, this group was much larger and had been larger all along, so we're starting with a smaller number of students here in this 5th grade to 6th grade. I do believe they are going to grow, but remember, we're starting at a much smaller number to begin with in the 5th grade, moving into the 6th. That 6th grade, this is the group, so they'll be going from 6th into 7th. We're estimating they're going to grow at least another 15, and we've seen this cohort group continue to grow as the years go on. So really looking at these numbers for estimates, we're basically looking at a flat number for Parker, because I think there's a good chance that even though our 5-year cohort is looking at 86, we may see flirting closer to the 900 mark, but that would be flat for Parker compared to this one.
How many students do you typically gain during the course of the school year?
I will tell you that we are taking new students almost every single day.
Okay, because it does seem like the number keeps growing since.
Even in the 5 years that I've been here, it seems like they just don't stop anymore. There was the beginning of the year, and then it kind of lulled. We would get some around Christmas time, and then it would lull back off again. They just keep coming. I mean, building principals, they just keep coming, correct? People? Yeah. I mean, it seems like every single day we got another family coming in.
So has the mobility rate increased?
It has. It definitely has.
You know, off the top of your head, how?
No, that I do not know. I have to get that for you.
Do we know, I mean, I think it's good because kids move here, and people move a lot more and live in Preston, and Crown Heights. But what, do we know why they're moving? Do we believe the families in terms of going for us as possible? And then I guess conversely, when people move away, which, for various reasons, I myself have made 10 transfers between kindergarten and 12th grade, so for me, growing up, I was always the new kid.
Yeah, no, we don't have really any data to say why. So kind of what's next? Now we're going to take those enrollment numbers, and we've already been working with it, and we kind of translate them into how much staff we need, how many classrooms we need. Like I said, that cohort, that big chart I've given you is district-wide, but I have the same charts school to school, and we have that estimated in grade to grade within each of the elementaries. So we'll be looking at the current number of staff in the building and how many we're over or under. We'll also be looking at what our needs are for returning staff. Maybe we have some retirees and the like, so we'll be looking at that. We'll be surveying staff on what positions they want to keep. Are they happy with 3rd grade? Would they rather move to 4th grade? There's no need, those kinds of questions. Then we'll be placing staff for the 17-18 school year, and then we'll be hiring for the end of it. So that's kind of where we're at now. As we go into spring, we're going to start anticipating posting any openings.
And that is the foundation, going back to the previous question of how we'll make our determination coming to you for FTE needs for next year. So, yeah, maybe we could take a break.
We are going to take a break at this moment, and we shall be back shortly. I mentioned about 5 minutes. All right, we're back in session.
I've got first reading of 3 revised policies. Actually, one that says revised, but one is a policy that wasn't in our book initially, and we are adding it in. So 2 of the policies deal with compensating expenses, and that's one policy specifically about board members. The other policy relates reimbursing staff for expenses. And then the other policy, the one that is new then would be the use of credit and procurement cards. That one is definitely then related back to the staff reimbursement policy. So you can see a reference back to that. We currently do have 2 credit cards that are in use in the district. Historically, there have been 3 is my understanding, but right now we just have 2 out there. So this policy would cover those 2 that are currently there. And previously the board had approved the use of procurement cards, though we haven't taken that step yet. And so this policy would get more of the foundation in place so that if we have procurement cards, we would know how we're operating with them.
So that's no longer, so you have to write the checks out to the restaurant in advance when you go down stage and
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yes, it's a good thing. Within that, so there's 3 levels we wrote in on page 2 on that particular policy. That's policy 4.55. The credit cards and procurement cards would have limits on them. So in this case, the coach taking a team or Ms. Fountain taking the chess team downstate would have a P card or a credit card with a limit of no more than $500 in a single purchase. Easily be able to take care of buying dinner for the basketball team on that card, no more than $1,000 within a given month without prior authorization from the superintendent or designee. There's a next level up then, and that would be building administrators having the ability to charge no more than $1,000 in a single purchase, no more than $2,000 in a given month, again without prior authorization. There may be times that we'd be able to use those cards more effectively than going through the whole purchase order process, but that's something, once we get the policy, then we work out the procedure with Fran and how we need things to run. But it gives them much more flexibility than we've had in the past. We had two administrators go to a conference. We would be issuing a card for them, make it a lot easier for them to pay for things and then to apply for their, either us paying the bills or then later if there were any reimbursements, it would minimize that number. The big cards then would be 2 cards, one for the chief school business official and the superintendent. No more than $10,000 in a single purchase, no more than $20,000 within a given month. And it indicates superintendent or designee. And what I'm seeing on that one is related to the other policies that we present to you tonight. If we are attending a conference, the tri-conference, for example, would allow Kathy to put any number of hotel rooms on one card at one time and not hit any kind of threshold. So she'd be able to arrange transportation for everyone. If we had somebody going to the national conference, she would be able to take care of hotel, flights, transfers if that's applicable, all on the card at one time, not worry about a threshold. If someday down the line we decide to use a P card for any different kind of purchases, we know there are districts out there that are able to purchase some utilities, for example, using their P cards because they get a rebate. This number would give us that ability to make those bigger kind of purchases. This does indicate that the board could at any point then up that upon request. We would not, Fran, myself, our designee, would not be able to do that without getting prior permission from the board. So there's our P card and credit card policy in a nutshell. There are other details in there that we certainly would brief staff on about how those cards are used, what kind of backing they need for those cards. We would have a checkout procedure for those cards. We're working currently, Fran and I just did a basic dialogue about how do you issue a card to a coach? Is that an individual card? Is that a building card? That's the kind of detail we need to dig into. But this gives us a good foundation for when we're ready to act on that. Anything to add on that one, Fran?
No, that was pretty basic, I think. And It's really just putting a good procedure in place, and we do have some drafts from a number of school districts, so I'm kind of compiling them together to try and come up with, making them our own, taking the best of anyone's already got some procedures out there.
In the board document tonight, the other two policies that talk about reimbursements for purchases that we might make in a professional capacity, you in a capacity of going to a school board association event, whatever it might be. What we're proposing in this policy, instead of using the exact press language about giving you direction on what kind of plane fare to purchase or what kind of car to rent, we recommend in this policy that whenever possible that booking of any of those trips go through my executive assistant, so go through Kathy. That way you're not faced with having to deal with questions about reimbursement on those bigger pieces. The pieces that we would then have to worry about are simply meal reimbursements, taxi reimbursements, smaller things like that. And the policy does prescribe that we need to have detailed backing for each of those reimbursements. The policy calls for, on both of these policies, the staff one and the board policy, that we write a resolution that goes along with the new budget that will be written. And that resolution will be a very public statement about how all these, how we're going to make these expenditures and how we're going to reimburse these expenditures. It's going to give caps on what those expenditures would be based on the budget for that year. So it will dictate to us, going forward, just like we talked about in staffing, that we need to get those numbers so we can build a budget. Part of that building the budget process is looking at our professional development for the board and for administrators and teaching staff, and figuring out what those numbers are going to be, writing a resolution that reflects those numbers. We did put one number in here, and all the districts were debating how to go about this. There was language in the original draft of the policy from the press policy service. Both. It's both. So it's both the board and both of these policies are pretty much aligned. One is just specific to you, one is to the rest of staff. And the real difference is that the staff one allows the use of P cards and credit cards. Yours does not. We're not supposed to issue one. In both of these, we strayed away from the language on meal reimbursement that was recommended by press. They recommended making meal choices in the mid-range on the menu, in the venue that you are in. And so if you are at a conference in Chicago versus a conference in Chicago Heights versus a conference in New York City, those numbers would be very, very different. We went ahead and put a number down for a meal reimbursement, a daily amount is what Fran and I put down there. And that's a number that some districts kept that mid-range language. To us, that simply is going to cause questions for people and
Take pictures of the menu, see, it was right there.
It's number 7. And over the years that the organizations have FOIA'd all the districts in the Chicagoland area about their expenses at the Tri-Conference, for example. And if you have that mid-range language, you're going to have people saying, well, that really was in the bottom half of the menu, I think, because I've been to that restaurant before, and they're going to start questioning you on that. We picked a dollar amount that we felt was reasonable, but certainly the board has the opportunity to adjust that amount since this is the first reading of the policy. So we indicated meals will be reimbursed at up to $100 a day unless prior approval has been obtained from the board to increase the amount based on the venue meal costs. So if we know that we're sending you someplace where you're captive and the prices are exorbitant and that would go over that number, then we would have that conversation before we would approve that travel, and the board would have the opportunity to adjust that. And that's the kind of language that we put in this resolution that we have to get together with John to write. That is, that's pretty much That's pretty much the basics of these two policies. Again, we think that we are more frugal and we protect you more by using Kathy to arrange travel. We think the same, that we'll be more frugal arranging travel for staff that way also. We know at times though that it may be more beneficial for you to drive to the event, and there's language in here that talks about how we will do mileage reimbursement. But other than that, we'll make every attempt to take care of as much of that travel for you as we possibly can.
Sounds good.
Any questions on these three? All right, so we will be bringing them back at a later date.
There was one question I had,
Yes.
there's some language in the one about the board that expenses must be approved by an open roll call, but there was no language, I missed the language about pre-approval before you go, because when, talking about precedent or practices, I go, then later on you say reverse.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, thank you. So this would be it would be in advance that the travel would be pre-approved by the board. Yep, and that was the big change in the law, thank you for bringing that one up. And that's where then we would know, hey, that if our limits were too low because of the venue, that's when that pre-approval would take care of that. So you don't come back from something and you're worried about, am I going to get reimbursed for this or not?
Okay, so just using a hypothetical, we're saying next year we decided, we really should go to the National School Board Conference, we should send 2 people. And so that's still something that has to come down to a board discussion and approval, because it's money being spent for a specific purpose for the board. It's not a case of, well, it's already in there, Kathy will take care of it, and then we get back to it.
Correct. So we would be having that conversation still in this fiscal year as we build the budget for next year, so that we can go ahead and plan for that possibility that some people are going to go to the national conference. That's what the board decides they want to do. We build that in, but you're correct, it is not a given then that 2 people could just call Kathy and say, hey, book us on this trip. It would have to come to a board meeting and have prior approval, even though the money is there in the budget.
With that in mind, what I would, and I don't remember if it's in the calendar or not, we should definitely have that conversation in August, so that it's not suddenly October and we're rushing to fit that in.
For the national conference?
For the national. So that way we have a sense, okay, is this something we want to pursue this year? This is what, they're speaking on, where are they going, how much is it going to cost, and, who are we going to send?
Yep. And so I'm writing it in on the fiscal year board topics. We'll put that right into August. I bet Kathy's already done it too. And certainly will calendarize that.
Okay, fantastic.
And I think we'll probably even, a little before then, as we're developing the budget.
Sure.
It will be talked about it before then.
I imagine, but I think that at least we should have a drop dead,
Yes.
we have to have this discussion moving forward.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would need to have some nod that's in consideration to build in
Right.
by the beginning of June.
Sure.
I'm going to write it in there also just to make sure that we have a little dialogue at this table. Once the new board is seated, to talk professional development with the budget in mind. And then it's that point too that we'll be working with John to get the resolution done that this policy calls for. Anything else on these policies?
I'm fine.
All right. Our next one is fiscal year board topics. Just wanted to bring up that we continue to cycle through these topics. We continue to add to these. The copy in front of you, I apologize, I forgot to calendarize a technology update, but we will plan to put that on the calendar soon. A whole bunch of tonight's topics were topics that we've been collecting since December and maybe even a little before. So I'm glad we could get to a bunch of those now. And so you'll see we've got a few different things coming up. We'll hear about things in March, such as summer school, which was mentioned here tonight. We will talk about some student fees. We'll hear from our administrators who received the most recent restorative practices training. So we've got a number of topics already being calendarized. I wanted to throw a reminder out tonight that if we get a few board members who want a topic, bring that topic to me, bring it to Steve, and we'll get it on an agenda. We're also going to tweak this, Kathy and I have been talking about a way to tweak it to make sure that we can see, from the outset, what is a recurring topic versus a fiscal year, this fiscal year only kind of topic. We know on these, curriculum updates are all over there now. We know what will be happening soon is that Amabel will not just be talking about mathematics, but then she'll be talking about the ELA adoption. We're just going to keep a generic curriculum updates on there and know that we're going to sign up for those.
One thing, I know we've talked about this as well, I think that we should have some sort of notation that if, for example, approval of student fees got pushed down to March, or we got it early in February, that we should note that it did move, so that somebody looking at the calendar would have a sense that, well, it typically happens in March.
Right.
So that their expectations are consistent, and that it's not a case of things are moving all over the place with, I think that'll help establish normalcy of expectations. And we also talked a little bit about some things that were sort of biennial considerations that we should look into if we had some sort of list of things that, every 2 years, for example, the board changeover of the elections, these things come up that it's nice to be able to plan ahead of time and think, 18 months from now, this is going to be a consideration.
Yes.
Or even, 5 years from now, this is the date that we need to start thinking about, looking for someone to help us put together a 5-year plan. This is when our 5-year plan, should be set. This is when we should have, revised mission and vision statement, so that there's a clear expectation moving forward. And certainly, the more we can create those expectations, I think the greater, the less surprises we'll have in the community, and the more transparency we can generate.
So speaking of things like that, you mentioned the every other year piece. We had on here reorganization of the board in April, and that takes me to my last topic for the open session here, is that there's a memo in your packet that indicates with where our meetings fall, we don't wind up with the law that dictates when we have to reorganize. So we finish our April 24th meeting, and the canvassing happens, I think, the day after that is the final day for canvassing. And so,
Right, the 25th.
So the 24th doesn't help us out. But then our first meeting in May is after the time which we need to seat the new board. And so I indicated in the memo that I'd like to have a board meeting then on May 1st. So I would change the planning calendar to indicate instead of April that it would go to May. Normally it lands in April, but this would be on the 1st. That would be your last board meeting, yes. It would be. That meeting would, we would finish old business here. So we would look at approving minutes from previous meetings. I anticipate it would be very minimal as far as that. We would talk about people who are leaving the board. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, after you leave, okay. And then we will, this board will retire with no further business. And then we might say that in Latin, or we might just stick to the English version. Kathy and I are debating the pronunciation of Synodai, I think it is, Synodai, one of those. And then we would welcome the new board members to the table, take the oaths of office, elect board roles, so president, vice president, secretary, and then we would ask for the board to consider and approve the calendar that night of meetings moving forward. So that would happen on the 1st.
Would be it? Would be like the shortest board meeting ever?
It should be the shortest, yes. Theoretically. The tricky part is when, depending on who the president pro tem is, if they're willing to give up the gavel. And that could be me. And so I'm just not sure yet. And that is it for my topics tonight, unless there are any questions about that or any of the others.
I don't have any. Anyone have any comments or questions?
So I'm not clear, are we going to do the board
Yes, thank you. So we still want to do that committee of the whole meeting. And by then, the new board members really will know pretty much who they are. And we're hoping that they will attend so that they're ready then for the action meeting that happens in May. So to keep the continuity of business going. We think, to keep bills being paid on time and anything that needs to be voted on, we'd like to make sure that that committee of the whole stays intact. And we'll try to not have it be as long as this one.
You guys have a long board meeting.
This one will be long, the next one should be short, right? Should be.
Okay, without any further discussion or comments, I then will move to our next item, which is executive session. The board will enter an executive session to discuss matters related to personnel, 5 ILCS 120/2C1. I imagine we will be there for about 40 minutes and, or less.
Or less.
Or less. So I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Mrs. Huckabee first. A big signal. This is Harold is second. Do roll call, Mr. Perino?
Okey-dokey. Huckabee?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, the motion passed. We will executive session 12:40.